Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Chapter 1, Beginning Familiar Forest, a vast expanse of unknown size and beauty, filled with towering trees so massive that even several grown men couldn't encircle their trunks with their arms. The grass, despite receiving no sunlight, stubbornly thrived in defiance of the imposing trees and bushes. The sun, unlike the blinding yellow flash of pure light in the human world, was a radiant golden orb illuminating the plain. The air was rich with the floral scent one might find in a virgin forest far removed from human civilization, evoking memories of summer days spent in the woods, eyes closed, leaning against a rock. If you listened closely, you could hear the soft lapping of a lake as water splashed gently against itself. A lazy cricket's chirping accompanied the melody. Beside that river, you could see a small cave, barely big enough for a human child to walk through. It was covered in moss and other plants, painting it green with a slight trickle of water flowing out of the cave, connecting to the river. The inside of the cave was much like the outside, with plants and rocks as the only visible features. There was little to no dirt or pebbles. Occasionally, drops of water would fall from the ceiling into the small creek below, joining the rest of the stream. Suddenly, one of the drops of water that was about to fall slowly changed color, transforming from a transparent droplet into a glowing yellow orb. It slowly grew larger and brighter by the second until it became a faintly glowing golden sphere in the darkness. When it reached its maximum size, it fell towards the ground, but unlike how a drop of water was supposed to fall, it descended slowly, almost lazily, like a leaf on a hot sunny day. Eventually, it reached the ground. The moment it touched the ground, it began to move as though it had just gained sentience, bouncing up and down, left and right, as it floated around the cave. What was this orb thinking? Someone might ask upon witnessing its strange movements. This, my friend, is our main character, who has just recently been reincarnated. What the fuck, where am I, and what happened to me? The Moon thought with maniacal panic and equally intense confusion. Just a few minutes ago, he had been fishing beside a river, expecting to catch something big today. And his expectations had been proven true as a massive fish caught his bait. Excited, he had hurriedly reeled in the rod, his hands moving with the practiced motions cultivated over a decade. Just as it seemed like he was about to catch the fish, the Moon's former self suddenly fell into the water when the fish suddenly resisted. The moment he fell, he instinctively and desperately tried to swim back to the surface, but something caught his leg and wouldn't let go. He struggled and struggled to free himself, but to no avail. Second after second, minute after minute, he slowly lost his strength. Without the energy to fight, his body sank deeper towards the bottom of the dark ocean. With the last of his strength, he opened his eyes and saw what was grabbing his leg and refusing to let go. It was the same fish he had been trying to catch. If only I wasn't alone, I would have eaten you raw and alive, you bastard, he thought as his vision dimmed. Only to wake up suddenly inside a random, giant cave with a glowing, orb-like body. The first thought that crossed his mind was that he was dreaming and that everything happening wasn't real. But the sensations he felt and the fact that he could see in 360 degrees quickly crushed that notion, giving way to panic and confusion about his current predicament. Why can I see and think when I have no body? And where the hell am I? He thought. He would have screamed if he had a mouth. Fortunately or unfortunately he didn't. So he did the only thing he could do in this situation, he screamed internally and ran circles inside the cave. Now, Moon, who had calmed down considerably, sat in the deepest part of the cave. His glowing body hovered just a few centimeters above the ground as he thought, all right, the plan is to get out and investigate, looking for anything helpful. With that, he slowly rose and floated toward the entrance, moving cautiously. Every few centimeters, he paused to listen to his surroundings before proceeding. Soon, he reached the entrance, and when he did, he took in the scene before him. The cave's peaceful, lazy entrance was dotted with small tufts of grass peeking through here and there. Massive trees, the likes of which he had never seen before, stood tall outside. The gentle chirping of crickets and birds accompanied the tranquil atmosphere. It was a picture of peace and serenity until the crimson-red sky greeted him. No. He thought, quickly turning around and retreating into the cave. He floated back to his previous spot, deciding he needed to calm down and think this through more thoroughly before making any moves. And think through, he did. For 30 long minutes, he stayed in the corner of the cave, motionless, deeply pondering whether he should even leave. On one hand, the cave seemed safe enough. On the other, the logical part of his mind chimed in, you don't know if this cave is occupied or not, nor do you know if you're not on a timer. The cautious side countered, so leaving the safety of the cave and venturing into the unknown is your solution? The logical side retorted almost immediately, you know I didn't mean that. I meant carefully and safely surveying the surroundings. The internal debate raged on for tens of minutes, with neither side willing to yield. Finally, the logical part emerged victorious, prompting Moon to float toward the entrance once more to survey his surroundings. Survey, he did. Slowly, he floated outside the cave, absorbing the environment. A soft breeze weaved gently through the towering trees and vibrant plants. The sound of the nearby river splashing against its banks added to the serene ambience. Golden sunlight streamed through the leaves, bathing Moon in its warm glow. This feels pretty nice, he thought as he continued to take in the view. He floated toward a nearby tree, marveling at its sheer size and height, before turning his attention to the surrounding flora. The vibrant array of colors blue, red, purple, pink caught his attention. How do flowers of so many colors and beauty thrive so close to each other? He wondered, amazed. While admiring the flowers, he noticed something from the corner of his vision, two unique shapes that seemed oddly familiar. What was that? He thought, floating toward them. It looks kinda familiar, as if I had seen it before, he pondered as he approached. Once he was close enough, he realized what it was. Oh, a rabbit. Wait, the fuck is it munching on? Though as he stared at rabbit, which was calmly munching on the internal organ of a massive eagle. The rabbit's front teeth worked methodically, chewing the bones along with the organs with ease. It would chew the bones as if it was a brittle chip for a second, then go back to eating the organs. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the rabbit paused and raised its head. Its grape-like eyes scanned the area, flicking left and right. Moon froze, intimidated by the rabbit's sheer size and bloody spectacle. It was nearly 4 times bigger than him, not even counting its ears or legs. I should probably go now, he thought, slowly floating backward, trying not to provoke the creature. But the rabbit, seemingly unfazed by subtlety, immediately noticed the orb and began hopping toward him. Oh shit, it noticed me, run. The orb thought, spinning around and hastily fleeing. The rabbit, as if intrigued by this glowing thing, pursued with increased enthusiasm. For a few chaotic moments, they played an impromptu game of cat and mouse. The rabbit, faster and more agile, was often on the verge of catching Moon, but the latter managed to evade by making sharp, unpredictable turns. Each near miss left Moon's non-existent heart racing. The rabbit, however, quickly adapted. It began to anticipate the orb's movements, slowing down just enough to retain control while cutting off escape routes. Before long, Moon found himself backed into the cave with no way out. "Nuu, go away," he thought frantically, retreating deeper into the cave until he was pressed against the wall. The rabbit, utterly unbothered, hopped closer, its floppy ears swaying to one side. "I said get away." The Moon screamed internally, wishing with all his might that it could phase through the wall behind it. Hop. 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 The rabbit was now so close that Moon could feel its warm breath brushing against his glowing form. Panic gripped him as he thought desperately, think of something, Moon. Think. Open a portal, teleport, lightning arrow, anything. His thoughts raced, and as if by instinct, part of his luminous body began to reshape itself. A golden aura, no bigger than a toothpick, formed into the shape of a sword. In a single swift motion, Moon willed the sword to strike, and it slashed across the rabbit's face, leaving a tiny but sharp cut. Startled, the rabbit recoiled with a squeal of surprise, then turned and hopped away into the forest. Moon stared after it, both exhilarated and stunned at what he just witnessed and did. Did I just create a sword? He wondered, his gaze shifting to the faintly glowing blade still floating before him. Though small and slightly translucent, it undeniably held the shape and sharpness of a weapon. With a thought, Moon commanded the sword to float closer, and it obeyed, gliding toward him like an extension of his will. He examined it, rotating it in the air, watching how the golden light played off its ethereal edges. I can shape my body. This is incredible. Excitement overtook him, and he decided to test his newfound ability further. Concentrating, Moon willed his glowing body into forming other weapons. A spear took shape, then an axe, and finally, a mace, all shimmering and faintly translucent like the sword. He swung them experimentally, the weapons cutting through the air with satisfying precision. Ha ha ha. This is amazing. Moon thought, marveling at the versatility of his abilities. He twirled the axe, thrust the spear, and swung the mace in a mock battle, exhilarated by the magical ability that he had now gained. But his joy was short-lived. After a few minutes of playful experimentation, Moon felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. His glow dimmed slightly, and a dull ache began to throb in his head. He realized with dismay that each weapon had drained his energy. Reluctantly, he dismissed the weapons, letting them dissolve back into his form. My head. It hurts. Moon thought, floating back to the safety of the cave's corner. He rested there, his light dimmed as he worked to recover his strength. Despite the discomfort, his mind raced with ideas about how he could use this newfound ability. Chapter 2. What if I created a bow and arrow from it and fired it? Would it shoot like I intended, or would it dissipate along the way like it did to that axe that I just threw a few minutes ago? What if I compress the energy before firing? Would it change it so it won't dissipate? Moon sat in the corner of the cave, his mind racing as he thought of ways to use his newfound ability. It would probably work. Heck, why stop there? I could also create a compressed energy armor or shield from it. He continued musing, his mind racing as he thought of ways to use it. Or find a new ability just like what he had found. While he was thinking, theorizing ways to use it, he suddenly noticed that the dim color orb that he had become had regained about 20% of its glow and light in just the few minutes that he spent musing and thinking. So fast? He wondered, as he had expected to sit in the cave for an hour or two at least for the glowing yellow thing that made him up to recover. With the rate it is going, I would probably be at full capacity in about 30 to 40 minutes. He thought, feeling slightly happy at the one good piece of news that happened today. Because today wasn't the moon's day, he died while fishing and was reincarnated into an orb of yellow thing, into a world with a crimson-red sky, which was never a good sign. Anything blue that turned red is not a good thing. Whenever it was water into red or sky into red. Heck, he would have thought he was in the underworld if not for the natural beauty of the place where he is currently located. So with a heavy sigh, he decided to put on hold any thought of going outside to venture until he got the basic hang of his ability. At least enough to the point he could escape from that rabbit if it ever came back. The weather was cloudy and windy outside the cave, with winds blowing so strong that it even bent bushes until it looked like it was squashed by something invisible. With clouds fully covering the sky, not a single ray of sunlight peeked through. In short summary, it's about to rain cats and dogs. But inside the cave, it was peaceful and calm, a stark contrast to the outside. Moon was inside the cave manipulating his body's energy, which he started to call holy energy, to create the shapes he wanted on top of his face, similar to HXHN basic training that he saw when he was a kid. At first, he called it the energy that made him up light element or magic, but through the experiment that he had yesterday, he discovered that the energy could be used to help accelerate the plant regeneration and recovery when applied to it. When he did, he instantly thought of naming it natural magic, but considering the color and the fact that he doesn't know if it would work on only plants, he decided to temporarily name it holy energy. However, the fact that he never saw a yellow nature magic might have influenced it. 12 Moon thought as he willed the energy to change shape as quickly as possible into the shape he wanted. With the number changing from the character that it was previously into the shape of 12. Not bad, I have gotten better at this. Moon thought as he continued his training. Another thing he noticed was that every time he trained, he grew a bit brighter when he recovered. Similar to muscle growth. And he learned of it because of how much the shadow was decreasing every time nighttime came around. While he was training and thinking, he heard faint footsteps sounding right outside the cave. Although if the weather had been better, he would have heard of it much sooner. What is it? Moon, though, as he started to focus on the footsteps and the entrance where the sound was coming from. From outside the cave, Moon faintly saw the shadow of the creature. It had 4 short legs and a big fat body, which reminded Moon of a cartoon that he used to watch when he was a kid. The creature was moving slowly. Not slow in the sense of a slow, it was slow because of very slow. It would take 1 or 2 steps and stop, then warily glance around itself. Its ears twitching every time. Is that a rat? Moon slowly made his assumption as he looked at the creature. This was proven true as the creature entered the cave, which was illuminated by the moon's faint glow. It was a big, fast rat, about 50 centimeters long and 10 to 20 centimeters tall. With black fur, akin to the darkness of the night, with dirt-colored stripes alongside some part of its body. A mouth full of sharp teeth that somehow gleamed in the faint light. What the fuck, are all animals this big here? Or am I that small? Moon, though, as he observed the rat, who, after entering, started to slowly approach Moon. Not directly, just a bit to the right, towards a big rock. 10 steps, 8 steps, 6 steps, 4-step rat slowly approached the occasional wary glances that he threw, slowly decreasing as it walked closer. Why is it approaching me so calmly as well? Moon wondered as he looked at the rat, only to remember a second later that he had become an orb of light, a small one at that, so it was no wonder that the rat did not notice him. Well, it works for me, I guess. Moon thought as he slowly waited for the rat to approach within a step or two's distance or for it to rest, to surprise attack it. Because he will be taking every damn advantage he can get. Whether it is needed or not. Although he is pretty sure he could take it on straight in a one-on-one fight. But he won't be taking chances. The training he had the past few days revealed that the energy-formed weapon's sharpness is at another level, especially the compact version of it, although he most likely would be out in a minute if he used the compacted version of the energy to fight. So he will be using the compact version of the holy energy only when required. For example, when his enemies get close to him or his enemy has a damn strong defense. Although from the info that he found out, he is pretty durable. Not in a rock-solid, durable. But an elusive durable. So he waited for the rat to let its guard down completely or get within a few steps distance. And it didn't take long, the rat stopped around 3 steps away from him, right behind a big rock inside the cave. Hidden from the view from outside the cave. But from inside, it was plain as paper. Moon slowly started gathering a large amount of holy energy right behind him, since he didn't want to wake the rat up. The holy energy behind him takes on the shape of a sharp sword as he gets ready to launch. The first thing he instinctively aimed at was its head, but he stopped himself at the last second. Since the trust he put in his aiming skill was not up to par. So he slowly changed the target of his aim, from head to neck, then to the body. Specifically the big fat belly of the rat. You shouldn't have intruded upon my home, Jerry's fat cousin. Moon thought as he launched the sword. Swish, the sword was fast, slicing the air as it moved through the air. Leaving behind a trail of yellow aura in its wake. Just as it seemed like it was about to hit the rat, at the last second, the rat suddenly opened its eyes and jumped up. Saving its life at the last second, although it wasn't unscathed, the lower part of its belly was sliced open a bit, and part of the internal organ, along with blood, gushed out. Looking at this bloody spectacle made Moon unconsciously wince, imagining himself being in its shoes for a second. The rat screeched loudly after that, rolling a few times before getting up, rapidly turning its head around, looking left and right, then up. After a second or two of looking around, it confirmed that there was no being beside it, but it was attacked. So it looked at the orb of light that probably attacked it. Since there was nothing other than it. Ghhhhhghhhhh. The rat hissed. Its teeth are on full display, then it rapidly ran towards the light, its teeth in full display as it attacked. In response to its charge, Moon materialized a shield, a combination of a compact needle and board, ready to turn the rat into a barbecue. But rat, seeing it, instantly jumped on the wall behind Moon and attacked from behind. Moon was a bit surprised but managed to turn the shield at the last second, allowing it to pierce the rat. It's a lower jaw, and it's the right claw getting injured as it jumped back, retreating but ready to attack the moment if a chance was to be given. Its eyes blazing red as it continued to hiss. 5 minutes later, damn, I am almost out of fuel, only 1/4 is left. Moon thought, his body much fainter than it was before, as he stood on top of the corpse of the rat. Every part of its body was filled with sharp, stab-like wounds, some as small as a needle, some the size of a chopstick. Heck, there was even one wound from the first attack that Yudo did that looked like a bullet grazed its stomach. If I had not trained in the past few days, I wouldn't have been capable of killing it. Moon thought, although he probably wouldn't have died since he is pretty elusive and durable. Change of plans, I would be training for a few weeks before I venture freely. Moon thought as he floated back to the deepest part of the cave. Although I now knew that I had gained a basic self-defense ability, I could probably go outside, at least in nearby areas. Moon thought as he went to sleep, since he was pretty damn tired. By sleep, he meant zoning out, staying in one spot like a zombie. A replacement for sleep for him, although he doesn't need it. But it keeps his mind well rested and refreshed, so he does it nevertheless. Moon could be seen standing outside the cave, saying goodbye to his home and place of birth. At least in this life. With heartfelt words that anyone who heard it would shed tears of sadness. Goodbye, cave. It was nice living inside you. I know it has been only a month or so, but I really appreciate that you protected me from the rain and wind when I was just born. But to find the answer to my question, I have to go. Moon said while bowing slightly. However, from the third perspective, it looked like the orb of holy light just flickered slightly when he bowed. Heck, when he was saying his goodbyes, the only sound he made from the third-person perspective was a low, deep hwa. Nevertheless, Moon turned around and headed north, opposite the tall mountain that he saw on the south. About 30 minutes later, Moon could be seen floating as he curiously looked left and right, getting amazed at some new things and in some getting surprised by their strangeness. The sunlight was occasionally falling on top of him, between the leaves of the trees, calming him down significantly, no matter how odd it was. The weather was sunny and comfortable, with not a cloud in sight, making Moon quite relaxed as he hummed a tone while he floated. looking for any intelligent life that he could find. Preferable if they are capable of conversing with him, although he doesn't have much hope in it. Nevertheless, any intelligent life is good enough for him. Oh, did that frog just swallow a bird 3 times its size? What the fuck, is that a fucking running flower? What a fat bunny, it is almost as round as a ball. Moon was in a high mood, his explorer instinct kicking in as he looked left and right, letting out his thoughts in words. Since no one would probably understand him. While he was going around, looking around, and exploring, he, from the corner of his vision, saw a group of green heads poking out of the bushes as they moved. Upon seeing it, the first thing that entered his mind was the thought of, are those walking watermelons? Only to shake off that stupid thought a second later. What the hell am I thinking? That is obviously not watermelon since there is hair on top of them, no matter how few there are on some of their heads. Moon thought as he approached the green tops that he saw. They were moving slowly as if they were carrying something. An assumption he made after noticing one of the hairs had circled the group once rapidly. They are just behind this branch. Moon, though, as he slowly peeked towards the group. What he saw both excited him and disgusted him at the same time. He saw a group of goblin-like creatures carrying a kobold-like being, with a pole penetrating from the mouth through the anus, akin to a pig with 2 goblins on each side carrying it. And the goblin-like creatures in question looked ugly, at least most of them were ugly, with big, run-down noses and balding heads. The yellow, sharp eyes were the cherry on top, making them the ugliest humanoid creatures he had ever seen. While the few that were not ugly were surprisingly cute. With a small nose, mouth, big eyes, and a head full of hair instead of the others beside them. In total, there were 8 ugly and 2 cute ones. Nevertheless, never one to judge by appearance, Moon approached them slowly, not to startle them. "Hello," he said, hoping they are capable of speech. Chapter 3 Kuda was a natural-born leader among goblins. Commanding and leading were part of her very being. Whether it was hunting or making decisions on behalf of her father, the village chief. She was part of all of them. More often than not, her decisions and suggestions led to a favorable outcome. If someone were to ask, what was the suggestion that most proves your capability? She would confidently puff out her chest and say that would be my suggestion from a few weeks ago. I suggested leaving the Canyon of Culture, the place where generation upon generation of their tribe lived, hunted, and more since food became scarcer and scarcer every year. That led to their tribe finding a place where the food was so abundant that most of the tribe members, who once looked sickly and weak, became fat and meaty, just like her father, the village chief. Kuta slowly turned her head right, towards the running river, where occasionally some fish would jump out of the water playfully then dive back into the water the next second. But this was not what she was looking at. Instead, she was looking at her reflection on the water. There she saw a cute, beautiful woman with full, fluffy white hair that fell on her shoulder. Big, pearl-like eyes that could be used as a mirror and a small nose that only made her even cuter. If only I were a male. She unconsciously muttered. The problem that she is currently facing is coming forth in her head when she least expects it. Lowering her high spirit until it was but a sliver of itself. The problem that she is currently facing is the tradition of the tribe, where women can never be tribe chief. They could, at best, be a shaman. Which is just a step below the head of the tribe. But it still made her frustrated and sad over the fact that she couldn't become the head of the tribe, just over the fact that she was born a girl. If the tribe's shaman had been male instead of female, she wouldn't have been allowed to hunt or lead at least. That's what she had learned from her mother, the tribe's shaman, who told her stories from 2 generations ago. While she was monologuing, she woke up from it when a green blur passed in front of her face. "Katu, stop running around, it is getting annoying." She instantly shouted, already knowing who it was, just from the brief blur. Okay, Kuda, calm down, I'll stop." The blur said as she came to a halt. Dragging her feet along the ground, she finally came into focus, and Kuda saw her clearly. She was another cute huntress from the tribe, with big green eyes, a small nose, and a tiny fang poking out from the left side of her mouth. Her face was lit with an ever-present smile. "You should stop running around, you're a ranger of the group, you shouldn't go around like a foe." She started reprimanding her as soon as she stopped. Only for Katu to just point her tongue towards her and respond to her. "And you should stop being so dramatic all the time, you always." While they were bickering, the rest of the hunters just looked at them with nonchalance since it was an everyday occurrence. Heck, just an hour ago, when they were hunting, they had this exact bickering. While they were bickering, Kuta, from the corner of her vision, saw an orb of light. The orb was moving towards them slowly, calmly. "Look behind you," she instantly said, almost bordering on scream, drawing the attention of the group towards the orb. Upon seeing the orb of light, which was slowly approaching them, slowly and steadily, Katu quietly whispered to Kuta. "What is that?" "I am not quite sure, But I think it is an elemental, or a spirit of the earth or light," she replied, the stone spear in her hand pointing towards the orb. Who was still approaching them slowly and steadily. When it was about 10 steps or so away, an extremely deep, magnetic voice that vibrated through her body sounded from the orb of light. It had a tone of silent confidence that bordered on arrogance, with a hint of compassion and kindness. The tone of voice that would normally make one annoyed or angry, but instead of annoyed, she was somehow unconsciously intimidated and panicked. "Hello," the orb muttered. The instant it did, Katu injected from beside her right after the orb of light sounded, not giving her time to fully process that it talked and could communicate and probably quite intelligent. "Do you know what Gua means?" "You did not hear it." Katu responded back to her a second later, sounding confused since she was pretty sure anyone who heard its voice would instantly know its meaning, since they sounded so deep and clear that it vibrated through her body. And the reply she heard answered her question the next second. "What? You understood what it was saying?" "Yes, I heard it. It said hello," she said, slightly louder, so the rest of the group could hear them clearly. Bunga, a male hunter from their tribe, asked in a whisper. "Is it because you are the daughter of the shaman that you could understand it?" Which was interrupted as another tribesman kicked his leg. "Now is not the time, bud." "What should we do, leader?" he asked. "For now, just follow my lead, don't do anything unnecessary," she said as she turned towards the light elemental. She stepped forward towards the orb and asked, "Oh, spirit, what is it that you need?" Her voice was slow and low, taking the role of a lesser party while spreading her palm towards Moon. Taking on a submissive pose, Moon was confused, since from his point of view, he had just said hello in greeting upon noticing that one of the girls noticed him. The instant he did, they jumped like they saw a big bad monster, pointing their weapon towards him, which was resolved the next second as one of the cute goblin girls gestured towards them to lower their weapon. Then the cute goblin girl walked over to him and spread her palm. Then said something, like Kiakwahi Ei, Tukki. Which, for obvious reasons, he did not understand. It seems I can't understand you, little girl. How should we communicate?" Moon wondered, since body language, normal language for obvious reasons isn't possible for him. The spread arm gesture that showed that they didn't want any trouble seemed to work as the flickering orb became stable. Upon noticing it, she sighed in relief since, from the record that her mother, the shaman of the village, revealed, even the weakest of elementals that could independently move was equal to a gob champion, a warrior that broke free from their natural limit and became something more. Only for her breath to hitch at the next second at what the light elemental said. The orb said, slow and steady, its voice echoing like the owner of that voice was thinking of something. Deciding something, which was not a good sign, since there was quite a bit of possibility that what it said the next second could decide their life and death. Then it came. "It seems I can't understand you, little girl. How should we communicate?" the elemental said, making her head spin. Since that means that they can't communicate or anything. Only for a light bulb to light up in her head, as an idea appeared in her mind. She looked towards the orb and gestured towards her mouth, then to Moon, a few times. Moon was unsure of what she was gesturing. Why would she suddenly gesture to her mouth and then to him, only to understand a second later, "You can understand me?" he asked in confirmation. The cute goblin girl nodded her head rapidly in response to him, indicating that she understood what he was saying. It instantly made him excited since if she could understand him, there would be at least clear, one-way communication. Although this way of communication is a bit rough, it still gets the job done. "Tell me, do all of you understand me?" Moon started to question the goblin girl. 55 minutes later, after a bit of back and forth, Moon learned that only one goblin girl understood him, while the rest did not. The reason? No idea since Moon can't understand it. Nevertheless, he learned that there was someone in the tribe or village, or wherever they lived, who could communicate fully with him, not one-way communication. Which excited him, so now he decided to tag along with them towards their home, together with 10 goblins. The journey back was surprisingly short and simple, although they were attacked 2 times by wolves and a kobold. But as a gesture of goodwill, Moon used his new improved, compact holy slash, to kill all of them. This caused the male goblin to shake and shiver, and the other female goblin to stare at him with a star in her eyes. The gaze of admiration, however, somehow made Moon more uncomfortable, compared to the fear and whimper that the male goblin occasionally sent him. "Your home is behind this hill, right?" Moon asked as he looked at the female goblin leading him. And he received acknowledgement in response, then he continued to float behind her, trailing her. When they passed the hill and entered the tribe, the sight that greeted Moon was a nasty one. There was a bunch of burnt corpses and half-eaten limbs everywhere, some stacked in a big pile, while some were thrown without care. The smell that greeted Moon was a brutal one. It reminded him of the maggot-infested burrito that stayed under his bed for 2 weeks, thick and heavy. The burn smell was the cherry on top, making Moon want to puke, but he endured it. Although even if he wanted to, he probably can't puke. Soon, when he was close to the main fence, which is probably the gate, he saw where they lived. They lived in a bunch of small caves, a bit similar to the one he was living in, but much deeper. The cave was filled with goblins that somehow made even the goblin that was walking together with him, specifically the 8 ugly dwarf-like goblins, look cute. There was an old, toothless goblin sucking raw leg meat with vigor, while in another corner he saw a few goblins throwing what looks to be shit at each other while cackling loudly at each other. Heck, there was one goblin with maggot-infested legs, the worms falling every time it walked. Another thing he noticed is that they were all dressed in rags that reminded Moon of cavemen, with the clothes they were wearing only covering the essentials. Upon seeing this, Moon silently thanked that he was an orb now and that he didn't have a body to manage, or else, he would probably have grimaced while pinching his nose or even gagged at least once. What a nice home you have. Where is the person that you said he or she could talk to me? Moon asked, silently urging her to find him that person immediately. He initially planned to stay with them for a few days and enjoy their culture, but the things he saw changed his mind. The female goblin turned towards him and nodded, the nervousness and panic that were there reduced to a much lower degree as she motioned for him to follow her. Which he was obligated with delight. While they were going, he saw a thing that made him even sicker. There was a freaking human skeleton among the bones. Probably been quite a few months since there was no maggot or flesh left, but the bone structure led him to this conclusion. The bone of a human being that he saw made his mind waver on what to do with this tribe of goblins. He initially planned to stay with them for a few days, help them here and there, then continue his journey, but now he did not know what he should do. On the one hand, they ate a human, an alive and living human, probably eaten or roasted alive if the sight that he had a few minutes ago was correct, but on the other hand, they did not do anything too bad to him. Heck, if he counts the help that he would receive soon, they are helping him. So whenever they were evil or not, they were his benefactors. The internal debate where his morals and logic fought tooth and nail continued until he reached his destination, approximately about 3 minutes. But in the end, the logic won, as he expected. With a renewed vigor, that made the holy magic that made him up light up even more intensely, he thought. I won't kill them, as long as they don't attack me. Chapter 4 Moon entered the cave following the goblin girl. The moment he entered, he noticed that the cave was much cozier than he expected. With animal skin carpet, wooden bed, chair, and table. Each one was crudely made, with splinters and cracks visible through the furniture but distinguishable nonetheless. The most striking part of the cave was the big cauldron that was in the middle of the cave, where a big iron pot was visible. A sight that both confused him and excited him. Confused because there shouldn't be anything as advanced as an iron cauldron in this tribe. Excited because it entailed that there was an advanced civilization that manufactured it. But the owner of the cave, who should be in the cave, was nowhere to be seen. He looked left and right, up and down, repeatedly a few times, before making sure that there was no one here. So Moon turned towards the goblin girl and was about to ask where the owner of the cave was. Before he could, the goblin girl walked towards the bed and yelled. Wake up, Mom. At least that was what Moon assumed she yelled. The yell caused a thud sound a second later from beneath the bed as a weary and soft voice sounded from beneath the bed. I am up, I am up. The voice tiredly said as she lifted the top part of the part, appearing from beneath the bed. What a weird custom. Moon thought as he watched this happen. Also quietly wondering in his mind, what fool invented this custom? If you built a bed and slept inside it, why make a bed in the first place? Why not just build a wooden box or something? That will save one the effort of gathering the wool and skin itself. Only for his mind to come to a grinding halt as he realized that he could understand her. Noted that the words that were spoken weren't as clear and loud as he wished, since he faintly heard a bit of Kia when she spoke, but he could easily ignore it and converse with her as he wished. Does she have an amulet or something that allows her to talk? He wondered after a second. While he is musing within himself, older goblin woman, who looks just like the younger one but older with wrinkles, start talking. Why did you wake me up? I already told you, only wake me up in case of emergencies or when it was time for dinner. The older woman said while yawning, a bit sleepy and clearly annoyed. The younger girl replied to her mother with a calm tone, showing no remorse over the fact that she woke up her mother rudely, without politeness. It is an emergency, Mom. Look behind me, there is an elemental who we encountered on our way home, and it is looking for your help. The mother of the goblin girl, the shaman of the tribe, finally, after waking up, shifted her gaze from her daughter to the other person in the cave. Specifically Moon, who was observing their interaction quietly from the side. When Moon noticed that the mother of the goblin girl was looking at him, he just nodded towards her politely and said, hello. However, from the perspective of the mother goblin, it was totally different. The elemental, who at first glance seemed to be of light element, looked like it shifted its gaze towards her instead of politely bowing, and the deep, heavy voice that vibrated did not help it at all. "Hello," it said, making the mother goblin a bit intimidated and fearful. Since all the years that she spent training and learning as a shaman, she encountered quite a bit of elemental, but all of them, without exception, had childlike demeanors and voices. With occasional strong elementals who were comparable to the gob champion, she encountered an always older personality and voice. So when she encountered an element that spoke in such a deep tone and acted like one, it intimidated her. There is also a fact that the elemental was of an unknown element, which only heightened it. So putting it all into consideration, she decided to act cautiously and carefully. So with a polite smile, she turned to the elemental and bowed deeply while saying, "Good afternoon, Lord Elemental." Meanwhile, her daughter, the goblin girl Cat, just looked at her mother with a tacit understanding. Instantly understanding that her assumption that the elemental being was extremely strong was true with how her mother was acting. Moon, who saw his future benefactor, was bowing so deeply and politely, almost servantly, while addressing him as Lord, instinctively responded to her. "You don't have to call me Lord or anything, or even bow so deeply, see." Just as he was about to continue and say, "Since you are older than me," he stopped in his tracks as he started to reflect on the possible age of the mother goblin in front of him. If the fantasy rule were to apply here, then the mother goblin should be around 10 or 15 years old. Heck, at the oldest, about 20 years old. So if they go by age, he is quite a bit older than her. He shook that thought out of his head a second later, whether the assumption he made was correct or not. It won't change the fact that she was going to help him and that she is being so polite that he could even mistake it for servitude. So he continued after the pause. "You can just converse with me normally. I came here looking for some information, and that goblin girl," he said as he shifted his gaze towards Katu, "said that you could help me." He continued. The conversation that continued was akin to a dry desert devoid of precious resource information finally meeting a lake worth of pure precious water. As Moon questioned almost everything, where they are, what the power structure here is, and the like, the older goblin woman answered him calmly and clearly. No complicated words, or terms, just the way he likes it. "We are in the Cadian River bank, the northern part of the familiar forest." The goblin woman, upon hearing his first question, after that, in return, she asked a question of her own. "Although it is quite rude of me to ask, are you a mutated light elemental?" Moon replied to her with an answer of his own. You could say that. The power structure here? Well, although I don't know clearly, it is said that a Dragon King is the ruler of this place. I don't clearly know. If you want more information, there is a city about a few hundred miles south, although they don't accept just anyone. But it shouldn't be a problem for you, sir. Where is the familiar forest located? Well, in the underworld, of course. The conversation was going smoothly, with the pieces of information that he needed finally coming together as it painted a clear picture. At least until the letter word underworld part came up. The moment he heard it, his brain froze for a good few seconds. His mind switched rapidly between quite a few different emotions such as confusion, disbelief, then finally panic as he tried to accept or deny what he heard. Since if the theory that he is a holy orb is proven true, then he would be a soon-to-be dead man walking, no, dead orb floating. In every mythology that he heard and knew, there was not a single one in which an orb of holy energy living in the underworld was safe. Heck, even a normal being in an underworld is not safe. And the fact that the goblin woman in front of him asked the question, "Are you really a light elemental?" The inquisitive, almost knowing tone like someone well acquainted with light elementals only deepened Moon's unease. What if I am not a being a holy orb? What if I am just a mutated light elemental like she said? Moon tried to deny it, but he, for some reason, knew that he was in fact a being of holy element. Call it a instinct or feeling and the like, he knew that he was a holy orb in an underworld, stranded and alone, while a raging range of thoughts was going around in Moon's head. From outside the cave, a loud shout shrilled like a crow sound as a goblin almost round as a ball with a deep sunken eye and face came in. "Katu, where are you? I fucking told you to fucking come to the main chamber when you come back." Upon seeing him, Mother Goblin muttered chief while deeply sighing as if the sight of him made her disappointed and irritated, while the younger goblin quietly muttered under her breath, "Father." Then the younger goblin girl hurriedly walked towards her father, her footsteps the only thing echoing in the quiet cave as she walked. Tick-tock, when she was about 3 steps away, she quietly spread her hand and said to her father, the goblin chief, "Father, let's talk outside. Sir Elemental is here." The chief of goblins looked at her with his yellow sunken eyes with an extremely irritated expression on his face. "Is that so? So, because of an elemental or spirit, you refused my order and came straight here? Instead of how I ordered? I have been fucking looking for you all over the tribe," Chief said, his nose flaring big as he rapidly took quick breaths. A vein appeared in his head as he shoved his daughter, Katu, to the side. While marching towards Moon, his eyes were angry and annoyed. "So you are that oh-so special spirit, huh?" The older goblin woman, who was standing nearby, walked towards him. Her footsteps were heavy and echoing as she looked at her husband if the other races' cultures were to be counted. Her expression was different from how it had been when he had first entered. Was filled with fury and frustration as she said, "Get out, before I kill you, you fat bastard." The chief who heard the shout instantly stopped in his tracks, the anger and irritation in his eyes fading rapidly as it was replaced with slight fear and a whole lot of silent frustration. I am the chief of the tribe," he said weakly, the strength that was in his voice gone. "You fucking bastard, get the fuck out before I cut off all of your limbs and throw them towards the pit, where they should belong." She responded, and when she was saying the first 3 words, she instantly remembered that Sir Moon was here, so she restrained herself, stopping herself before she cast a spell and threw him out of the cave while cursing him in 9 different languages. Meanwhile, while the mother goblin woman is cursing him, he just looks at the wall beside her silently. His heart burning with anger, but the cowardliness and weakness eroded it before it could do something more. The mother goblin, who was continuously cursing as she approached. When she was about a step away from him, she shoved him towards the wall, just like he did to her daughter. While uttering the word, "Pathetic bastard, get lost," so he was thrown towards the wall, and when he hit the wall with the back of his head, something seemed to snap in him as he, for the first time in years, he yelled towards the shaman of the tribe while throwing his fist toward her face. "I am the chief, you fucking bitch." The mother goblin just looked at his slow approaching fist impassively as she sidestepped it while throwing a punch of her own toward his face. Goblin chief, who missed his target and was stunned by the punch he received unconsciously, just continued the action that he last did, which is charging and throwing his fist. But unfortunately for the goblin chef, the place where he was charging while punching was where Moon stood, in deep thought. Chapter 5. Moon looked towards Katu, the young goblin girl who had already gotten up when the goblin woman and goblin chief were talking, with the goblin woman doing most of the talking, as in cursing, then slowly shifted his gaze towards the mother goblin slowly and steadily, almost mechanically. Although from a third-person perspective, it just looked like the orb shifted a bit. Oops," he said, his voice echoing through the cave since there was no other voice inside the cave. And the sight that he saw surprised him, instead of the expected anger, fury. He only saw a small bit of remorse in her eyes when she looked at the dead goblin chief. After a few seconds of looking at the goblin chief, she moved her gaze toward him, fell on her knee, and bowed before him. Her head touched the ground. "I am extremely sorry for the unsightly display, Lord Moon. I did not expect something like this to happen." If Moon had a mouth, then it would have fallen to the ground like the old cartoon series he used to watch as a kid in his previous life. "Why? Aren't you sad that I killed your husband?" he asked. The goblin woman slowly raised her head until she was sitting upright but still on her knees. She then slowly shook her head left and right. "I think you misunderstood, Lord Moon. In goblin culture and society, there is no such thing as a husband or wife. Nor is there any deep relation between oneself and the rest of the tribe. Whenever it was between father and son, or mother and daughter." Moon stood quietly, his mind processing everything, the fact that in goblin society and culture, there is no such thing as familial love and affection if what she said was true, while in his subconscious mind, he silently lowered the level of the goblin heritage and society as a whole by a few points, with it now hovering just slightly above a wild savage animal rank. "My daughter and I are an exception among goblins." Moon's subconsciousness slightly, just slightly, increased the goblin's heritage and culture rank. "So, if you and your daughter are exceptional and have familial love, why aren't you angry at me?" "I killed your husband," he asked. Then he turned towards the young goblin girl. "Your father." The goblin woman just bitterly smiled in response to him. "He stopped being my husband when he broke the oath that he made to me 7 years ago by fathering 3 other bastard children." Moon took a sharp breath, his mind in shock as he tried to understand what he had heard. "Damn, I shouldn't have asked that question," he thought silently in his mind while thinking in the back of his head. 3 bastard children? Not 1, not 2, but 3? Only for his mind to be interrupted by what she said next. While shaking her head, she said slowly, "He wasn't always like this. Back then, when I, after getting kicked out of the magic tower of Masterkite, was wandering alone and scared. He found me, helped me, fed me, and taught me things that I did not know. In return, I protected and defended him. Together we have gone through quite a lot. But with time he changed, he became more and more lazy, and the ambition that was once blazed, like fire, became just a spark." Moon muttered. One part of his mind wanted to make her stop recounting her life and how it happened, while another part wanted to just sit there, listen to her love opera, and munch on popcorn. Granted, he couldn't eat it, but the desire was still there. Two sides started to fight against each other, and in about 10 seconds, the reserved, polite one won against the opera lover side. So he shifted his gaze towards the young goblin girl, Katu. He then quietly made the part facing Katu a bit brighter a few times, akin to a flashlight, which he hoped that she would understand as him wanting her to stop her mother. Why not do it directly? Because the goblin woman looked like she was having a hallucination of her own life, with her eyes distant and gone. Heck, she was even waving her arms around herself every time something shocking happened, and it partly intimidated him and partly made him unsure. If he were to make an example of what he was feeling, it would be like waking up early in the morning, then going shopping, and while shopping, seeing two lovers breaking up. In short, extremely awkward and feeling like it is not your place to intrude upon. Katu looked at Moon, confusion adorning her features, trying to make sense of what Sir Moon meant. But a second later, she made her own conclusion. Mom. The older goblin jolted at her daughter's intense call, causing her to stop recounting her life story and turn around. What? Tell Sir Moon that I also don't have any hatred or anger towards him. The younger goblin girl, Katu, said. Oh, I forgot that you still can't converse with him. Here, take this. She said as she pulled out an amulet from her back trunk and gave it to her. Okay. Katu said as she grabbed the amulet, clutching it in her hand, and turned towards Moon. Sir Moon, I also don't have any hatred or anger against you. Meanwhile, Moon thought silently in his mind. She did not exactly understand my intention, but in the end, it worked. Then Moon addressed the goblin woman and Katu. Should we bury him? And he received a nod of agreement from both of them. After that, they put the body on a bedsheet. The goblin woman called 4 goblins in from outside and made them carry the cover in which the body lay. They walked out of the tribe, around a kilometer, until they stopped, and then the goblin woman ordered the 4 goblins to dig a hole and bury him. Simple and barbaric to the point it made Moon question why they were even bothering to bury the body in the first place. Even a small part of Moon felt that if he did not question them, they would probably just throw the body outside without care. Whether it was the goblin who saw them carrying their tribe chief's body nonchalantly or the mother-daughter pair who only had a hint of remorse in their eyes. When they were burying him, it made Moon question if he was the weird one here. But he shook the thought a second later. Different world, different species, different culture. He murmured in his mouth while floating back towards the goblin woman's home to continue what they left off. 5 days later. So, this symbol is the divider, and this is the logic gate of this diagram, huh? Moon sat inside the goblin woman's cave, reading an old totem-like book. Sunlight streamed through the entrance, transforming the usually humid and cool cave into a dry and warm space. Not that Moon felt any of it. But what is this? Let the instinct of the past ones guide one's actions. This part doesn't make any sense. Moon sighed, trying to decipher the previous paragraphs and symbols, but it was to no avail. I can understand the basic human magic part, but the traditional goblin tribe shaman part? I don't understand any of it. He murmured under his breath. A few days ago, after conversing with the goblin woman, Moon decided to stay with the tribe for a short while. He wanted to familiarize himself with them and gather information he had missed or forgotten to ask. Not like I have something urgent to do. He thought while attempting to put some formulas he had learned into practice. For obvious reasons, it didn't work. Holy energy and mana were 2 entirely different types of energy, different in characteristics, quality, and reaction. However, studying them provided him with a fresh perspective and new possibilities he hadn't considered before. Over the past few days, he had created a few techniques, Flash Bang, TNT, and Flash Boost. As their names suggested, Flash Bang, blinded enemies, TNT, concentrated holy energy into a powerful detonation, and Flash Boost, propelled him in a straight direction using a one-way explosion while simultaneously manifesting a protective shield beside his body. However, these techniques were far from perfected. Some only worked once every 10 attempts, while Flash Boost had succeeded only twice. Sir Moon, here is your requested book. A voice called from behind him, breaking his train of thought. Thank you. Moon said, taking the book and glancing at Katu. Her hair, previously left loose, was now styled into twin ponytails, enhancing her already cute features. Her petite frame, combined with the new hairstyle, made her resemble his younger sister from his past life, short, extremely petite, and adorable. The resemblance amused him slightly. Noticing that she wasn't leaving as she had previously, he asked, "Did you need something?" Sir Moon, the new chief of the tribe is being selected today, and a huge festival will follow. Do you wish to participate as a guest of honor? The word festival piqued Moon's interest. He was curious about how the new chief would be selected and what differences the festival might hold compared to human traditions. "Yes, I'd like to participate," he responded, closing the book before floating toward the main clearing where the event was to take place. His assumption was correct. The entire tribe had gathered. In the center, a group of male goblins stood, glaring at each other menacingly, while the rest of the tribe sat on the ground, eating meat and drinking water. To the south, a table with 3 chairs had been set up. One was already occupied by the goblin shaman, who waved at him with a light smile. Obliged to acknowledge her, he floated toward the table. "So, they fight to determine the chief?" The goblin woman nodded. "Yes. Outsiders often call it barbaric and primitive, but it works for us. Have a seat." Moon accepted the offer, but instead of sitting, he hovered above the chair. A ridiculous gesture? Perhaps. But the intention remained, so he didn't mind. As soon as he took his place, the goblin shaman stood and announced the rules before initiating the tournament. 8 male goblins participated, all sharing the common features of their race: large, run-down noses, sunken yellow eyes, and thin lips that barely concealed sharp teeth. Moon found the matches predictable, barbaric and anticlimactic. The biggest goblin was immediately ganged up on, followed by the second biggest, until an above-average-sized goblin emerged victorious. "Ha ha ha ha. I am the chief." The newly crowned goblin shrieked, his voice akin to a banshee's wail. Thanks to the amulet given to him by the shaman, Moon understood every word. And yet, he immediately regretted attending. "I shouldn't have come here," he thought, already searching for an excuse to slip away and return to his cave. Chapter 6. Outside in the clearing where the new chief determining tournament had taken place, Moon could be seen with a small backpack filled with books and some mischievous stuff floating right beside him, saying a good farewell to the tribe that had accommodated him for the past 10 or so days. Although the word tribe probably wouldn't fit in that well since there were only 4 goblins saying farewell to him. "Farewell, Sir Moon, may the stars of the past one shine upon your path," the goblin woman said while waving her hand. "Goodbye, Sir Moon," the new goblin chief said while bowing his head. His deep, sunken yellow eyes glazed over the sun behind Moon, making Moon appear divine in nature, with a faint pair of priceline white wings visible. He rapidly shook his head a second later, thinking that he was seeing things because of how much he drank and ate yesterday. Moon nodded in response to them. "If there is any trouble or calamities in the future, don't hesitate to break the amulet, I will be there," Moon said, his deep and magnetic voice still making their body shiver and vibrate. But because of the time they all spent together, they were already used to it and did not bother them at all. "Hee hee hee." The goblin woman quietly giggled under her breath, possibly because those were the exact same words she said to Sir Moon, right after he said he was going to depart. "Although we aren't strong or many, if you need help, don't hesitate," she said, and there he was, saying the exact same thing she had said. "Understood, Sir Moon, I will be sure to remember it," she lightly teased, but the rest of the people besides the main culprits, who are Moon and the goblin woman, did not understand any of it. To them, it sounded completely normal. But Moon, who understood it, was slightly embarrassed, although he didn't show it, or more like he couldn't. "Then farewell," Moon said as he marched south, where the city of Cain is located. The sun was high up in the sky, casting direct sunlight onto the ground, causing the weather that would otherwise be warm to become a hot frying pan. But the fierce wind caused the otherwise hot temperature to be a cool summer day. Birds chirped as they went about their business without a care in the world, while the other animals, such as rabbits, rats, beavers, and the like, were moving quietly, creating a strong contrast in an otherwise normal picture. Moon hummed a little lyric under his breath. A song whose words he forgot, because he is really not into music. At least that was what he assumed. But ever since he reincarnated here, he hummed a little lyric under his breath whenever he wasn't doing anything or with someone. A bad habit in a place like familiar forest. But he did not care much. On another note, the name of the forest and the fact that it is in the underworld somehow stirred some memories of his past life. Specifically, an anime about a perverted teenager named Saihayuto, who, using the power of boobs, became one of the strongest entities in existence. Granted, the main character did not become one of the strongest by sleeping and touching boobs all day long. He trained quite a bit and fought for his power, although he did get a few power boosts from breasts which even to this day, he thought it was ridiculous. "Sir Moon, what are you humming?" a voice asked from beside him, prompting him to stop musing with himself and look at the person who asked the question. "Katu." "A lyric of a song, long forgotten," Moon replied. "Why hum the lyric? Why not just sing the song?" Kata asked, her big, pearl-like eyes gazing at him like a big, cute hamster. "Because I don't know the words of the song," Moon replied back. Kata put her hand under her chin while her eyes shifted from Moon to the ground in a thinking pose. "I see. Her eyes were furrowed as she cupped her hands under her chin. On another note, why are you following me? Moon asked, curious as to why she was following him. Because mother said I should broaden my horizons and try to reach higher places when I am young. She answered, her face a picture of calmness and neutrality. Moon nodded his head at her reasoning. One should work hard when one is young and energetic, or else when they are old and weak, even if they wished, they won't be able to. But nevertheless, she did not answer his question. You did not answer my question, why are you following me? Because I thought you wouldn't mind it. I can be your servant when we are traveling together, and you can be my protector. She said, nodding her head slowly as if she made a wise decision. Her twin ponytail goes up and down in the process, making her look extremely cute. And the smug look on her face that showed her satisfaction was the cherry on top, making her the cutest smug bunny in the world. Moon softly shook his head, feeling happy and a bit helpless. Happy because he wouldn't be alone on the journey, since she would be with him, although he would have to make many more stops than he intended because of her basic needs, such as food, sleep, rest, etc. Helpless because from the few weeks that he has been with her, he learned that she is extremely stubborn to the point one might question if they are talking to a brick wall. If he said no, I won't take you with me, she would probably just go alone in her journey. Although he would never allow her to go alone, since he started to care about her. Okay. Moon replied. Then they continued their journey. During the day, they traveled for 6 to 7 hours while spending the rest of the time doing other things like reading the books that he had gotten from the Goblin Woman and practicing his powers while thinking of a way to improve them even further. Well, for Katu, it was cooking, sleeping, training, eating, and the like. Heck, after one time, because of how hard she pushed herself, she did not have any strength or energy to make food for herself. Moon made it for her that one time, causing him to become her personal chief. But Moon did not dislike it. Since only training and reading were causing him to be incredibly bored, he did not mind having a hobby of his own to pass the time and release the stress that had unknowingly accumulated. 5 days later, the sun was high up in the sky, spreading its warmth for all the world compassionately without care, with little to no cloud in sight. With the wind non-existent, it was so hot that it made Moon question if the underworld was finally waking up from its slumber while making Katu, who otherwise would laugh and cry out joy while traveling, pant like a dog, despite Moon having already taken off her backpack. We should rest here, Moon said, stopping in his tracks while surveying the surroundings. They were inside a flower field, with flowers of all 7 colors of the rainbow glittering like a gemstone. Making one question if they are in a fairy tale, although the deep red color of the sky reduces the shock factor by quite a bit. Nevertheless, a beautiful place that would be impossible in his previous life. No, Sir Moon, I am fine, I don't have to rest, she replied, with sweat glistening on her forehead, while panting between each word to take in extra air. We will rest here, Moon said, his voice firm. She raised her to look at Moon for a few seconds, her eyes deep and with unknown meaning before she hung her head low. Understood, she said, her voice softer with the slightest bit of happiness seeping from it, while her ears twitched slightly. When suddenly Moon sensed a few humanoid beings approaching him. Get down, something is coming, Moon calmly said as he lowered himself to the ground level, while Katu, upon hearing him, rapidly jumped to the ground. They stayed like that for a few seconds, with the sun shining down upon them relentlessly and without mercy while some ants crawled upon Catus, thinking it was the dead carcass of an animal. When finally a group of human-like beings approached them. Why human-like? Because they had bat-like wings sprouting from behind them while they slowly floated to the ground. There were 3 of them, with 2 males and 1 female, and they, without exception, had handsome or beautiful features and bodies that would put the model from his previous life to shame. The female one has wide hips that look straight from hentai and a thin waist along with a C-cup breast size. While the male ones had broad, muscular shoulders and bodies that looked straight from an action movie while having handsome faces. Moon focused deeply on them, his face trailing across their body and face as he analyzed their behavior and their intention. The female one always walked in front of them, her expression changing from angry to frustrated then back to angry, while she kicked up a stone or branch every few steps, acting like an angry child who lost his or her lollipop. The 2 guys who were trailing just beside her had neutral expressions, which sometimes changed, for a brief moment, to exhausted and tired. They always moved in unison, flanking right beside her to protect her whenever necessary while surveying the surroundings every few seconds. Their sharp gaze trailed in the sky the longest. Probably the bodyguards, Moon concluded. When they were about 40 steps away, Moon faintly heard a few keywords from the younger girl's mouth, because she was ranting about it to her bodyguards quite loudly. Rya's Creamery. How did she? Peerage, unfair, I also want. Peerage remembers the words that left her mouth stunned Moon, leaving his mind in a rattling mess as he connected the dots. Familiar forest in underworld, Ryaz Greenery, peerage members. Well fuck. Moon unconsciously muttered as he looked at Katu, motioning her to follow him as he made his way out of there. With flowers and insects as company, Katu slowly crawled behind Moon, slowly making her way towards him. 5 minutes later, Moon could be seen floating on top of a rock, equivalent to a chair for him. While trying to calm his worldview, which was severely cracked because of the fact that the world, which he thought was fiction, was real and he was living inside of it. So DxD is a real world, with real living breathing inhabitants, living creatures and real laws governing them. There are also things like booster gear, true longinus, and other types of bullshit items that could destroy the world in the right hands. Oh, how could I forget? There are also the dragon gods, Uphus and Great Red, who live in the interdimensional void. Moon rapidly thought in his mind while in another part of his mind thought. If all fiction is real, then those hentais and NTR stories are real. Oh god, why did I think of this? If they are real, then what the fuck is going on in their brain? A titanium alloy dense husband and boyfriend who did not notice a single thing when they were cucked blatantly, and the cheating wife and girlfriend who spread their legs if anyone pushed them just a little bit. Moon stayed like that for about 60 minutes, trying to calm his raging imagination. It took him about 5 minutes to fix his worldview since he already suspected it, but the thought of that hentai world relentlessly gripped him, refusing to let go even when he wanted to stop. But after a hard and deep fight, he finally stopped it and came back to his senses. Sir Moon, can I cook? Katu, who sat beside him, asked, her stomach making a grrrr sound as she clutched it for the past 30 minutes, but thinking that it was not the right time, she endured it. And she had only said it when she noticed that he stopped flickering and stopped shaking, so she asked. Ah, yes, you can, they already left and flew west, so you don't have to worry about them. Sorry, I should have said that we won't be moving. He said as he gazed at her. Kata just shook her head left and right adorably and said, you don't have to worry, Sir Moon. After eating and resting for a bit, they decided to find a cave and rest there. They looked around for a bit, about 30 minutes, before they found a suitable cave to spend the night. Kata quickly set up the bed for both her and Moon while also setting up a simple alarm in case anything got close to them. Meanwhile, Moon just looked up at the sky, looking at the beautiful stars that had existed for millions of years and would for another few million with wonder. Wondering in his mind if there were beings even older and more ancient than it, how would they look, and how would their personality be? Would they be like an all-knowing sage, or would they be like an indifferent god who gazes upon all with cold eyes? He just stayed like that, wondering while trying to ignore a small part of that was screaming to him, the stars you are looking at are probably not real, probably just an artificial creation of a Beelzebub. While he was there looking at the sky, he heard a voice. A voice that sounded both eldritch and holy, as though it were being spoken in 1,000 different languages simultaneously, yet without uttering a single word. It also felt like the meaning of the word was being sent directly to his mind. Chapter 7. A sun was rising slowly towards the sky where it belonged, prompting the animals in the forest to wake up and start resuming their life. For animals such as wolves, lions, and the like, to hunt. While for animals such as cows, pigs, and bunnies, it was to go out and eat their grass or fruits. The sun first cast its radiant light on distant mountains, illuminating them, then it was a massive tree's turn, making the trees that in the dark had the color of a sluggish green even to those with good vision regain their beautiful color of bright natural green, and then slowly it was the ground under it. Fortunately or unfortunately, for Moon and Katu, their cave was facing east, and the cave was not that deep, so the sun cast its direct sunlight on them, illuminating and basking them in its radiant light, prompting Moon to instantly wake up from his half-ass sleep. After that, he slowly got up from his head, which looked like a cat's bed with a pillow filled with grass in the middle while surrounded by another pillow that wrapped around whoever sat on top of the middle pillow. Pwah! Moon yawned. Although he didn't have to, he did it nonetheless. Meanwhile, beside him, Kata just put her blanket over her head, blocking the sunlight entirely from herself, probably saying 5 more minutes in her language, at least that was what he understood from it. Meanwhile, Moon got up and went to fetch water for Katu. For her to wash her face and hands while also getting water needed for breakfast and drink for the day. I saw it somewhere here. Moon thought as he started looking around the surroundings of the cave for the river that he saw yesterday when they were looking for the cave. A few minutes later, Moon found the river. It was a freshwater lake that looked akin to a fountain of youth in his previous life. It was so clear and natural that one could see right through it without obstruction, but in this life, for some reason, a sight like this is common. He then slowly scooped up considerable amounts of water and returned to the cave. After he came back, he scooped out half of it into the pot and made a simple broth with dried meat that they had. While putting the leftover water outside for Katu to wash her face and hands. Soon, the delicious smells of broth started to spread through the surroundings, filling the tiny cave they were in and signaling to anyone that food was soon going to be ready. Katu's nose twitched a few times when she, in her sleep, smelled the broth soup, her nose signaling the brain and the stomach to wake up and eat some delicious broth. Brain, upon receiving it, refused, blatantly stating that it needed more rest, but stomach, who learned of it, teamed up with nose and relentlessly bombarded brain without a pause or delay. The brain, who initially refused, slowly relented under their combined power, prompting Katu to wake up. Phew! She yawned as she got up, her eyes still half closed and a small amount of tears running down her face. But it soon changed, as if finally fully registering what Moon was making, her eyes opened fully, and a happy smile adorned her face. "Good morning, Sir Moon," she yelled energetically. This caused Moon, who was stirring the food calmly and lazily, to jolt, nearly causing the broth to spill, but at the last second, Moon managed to materialize his energy over the broth, saving it in the process. That was close. Moon muttered under his breath while sighing in relief. "Is it dried pork broth today?" Katu quickly asked, her eyes glistening with stars, a sign that showed how much she liked that particular something. A dried pork meat broth, a food made in heaven, she always called it whenever someone asked. Moon just sighed while showing a faint smile while shaking his face slowly, if he had a face in the first place, that is. Since from a third-person perspective, it looked like Moon just turned to her. "Wash up first before eating." "Okay," she shouted like an excited child while rapidly running outside without wearing her boots, her small feet squishing as she sprinted away. Moon, who was behind her, just shook his head at her irresponsible antics. After she came out of the cave, she looked around for a bit, looking left then left as she looked around. But the only thing she saw was some small bushes and a hill in the distance. She muttered, thinking in her mind if she should ask Sir Moon where the water bucket that he usually prepared was. But she shook her head a second later, scolding herself for becoming reliant on Sir Moon even though she was supposed to be the servant. So she turned around to look for the small bucket that she had to fetch some water herself, only to see it right beside the entrance of the cave. Half full with clear water that shone under the sunlight. "Oh, it was there," she said as she walked towards it, while still thinking that she had become too reliant and should stop. Right after breakfast, she quietly thought in the end as she washed her face and hands. She came in just in time when the broth was just fully finished cooking. Moon filled her bowl generously to the point it was about to spill, and she dug in the next second. Her teeth rapidly munching on the meat as she drank the soup. Despite her mouth being already full, she scooped up another spoon and put it in her mouth, causing her mouth to swell like a balloon and making her look like a fat hamster. Moon just looked at her quietly from the side while she did this. His sight never left her as he watched her. She finished her bowl of soup in just 5 minutes despite it being a considerable-sized bowl. She even ate the broth in the pot right after, finishing it to the last drop before she stopped. "I am full," she said while leaning backward. Her two little hands supported her from behind as she leaned back, while her expression was one of pure satisfaction as she burped the next second. The satisfaction and joy were short-lived, as Moon, who sat beside her, declared something. "I changed my plans. I won't be going to the city for the time being. So I will be escorting you back to your tribe for the next 2 or 3 days." Katu, who heard all of this, just slowly blinked, her expression not changing the slightest bit. 1, 2, 3 times she blinked without saying anything. And when she blinked for the 4th time, she said, "Why would not going to the city have something to do with me not going together with you?" I am not going towards the city in the first place, I am traveling with you. Are you discarding me because I am useless and lazy? I promise that I... She muttered the last sentence with her head down, her expression hidden behind her hair as she looked down. "No, of course not. Why would I discard you? It's just that the place I am going to go to is quite dangerous, and I might not be capable of protecting you." "Oh, if that's the case, it is fine. I am a proud goblin warrior and apprentice shaman. I am not afraid of dying," she said while puffing out her chest. Her face was a picture of pride as she put her hands on her hips in a cheap superhero pose. "You might die, you know," Moon asked again, trying to dissuade her despite the futility of it. "I am fine, Sir Moon," she said, her voice firm and her eyes intense as she declared. "Huh. All right," Moon said with a resigned tone, accepting the fact that she would go with him. After that talk, for the next 10 or so minutes, serene silence graced them as they started doing their own thing. The silence that descended was of comforting silence, one that Moon thought was not bad. But everything has an end, so Moon brought up his goal to Katu to discuss, thinking that her opinion should be superior to his since she lived and hunted in the forest all her life. "I want to slay a peak low-class being or low-mid-class," he said to her. Katu, after a few seconds of silence, with a frown etching on her face, probed. By low class, do you mean alpha rank? She said, clearly not understanding what he really meant but having some guesses. Alpha. Moon thought in his mind, feeling like he had previously heard the term. Only to remember the next second, where he heard it. The goblin woman explained it to him in one of their discussions while they were talking about the rank of beings. Yes, alpha peak rank. Or high alpha low. If we're looking for some alpha or high alpha class beings, then we could head west about 30 kilometers, where our tribe was originally located. I know of a few locations in which alpha peak or omega lows live. She said, providing her opinion and knowledge that she had. Alright, let's go there. Moon said after a few seconds of thought. Thinking that it shouldn't go wrong following her suggestion, since he didn't have anything better. After that, they talked about a few other things, such as the possible beings that inhabit there and the road they will take to reach there. Kat suggested going through the route from which her tribe came since it had proven that it was safe and sound. Moon agreed but suggested going over a mountain range instead of detouring back to the village. To save time and effort. Kat agreed with Moon's suggestion, making them go through the route. Alright, everything is finished. Moon said, his voice energetic, with his whole body glowing a bit brighter than previously, happy that there was a possibility that he could gain a physical body. Despite the advantage that his body offered, which is no need for food or drink and sleep. Quick recovery and an elusive body in which, if not hit by a spell or mana-enhanced attack, he is unkillable. Yes, unkillable, but it is possible to severely hurt him and trap him since he is not a complete ghost or something. But in the end, despite the advantages that his new body offered, nothing can beat a physical, living, breathing body where one can do as one wishes without restriction. Katu exaggeratedly yawned while stretching her body. Her body made a few cracking noises in the process as she leaned back, a bit tired from the intense discussion they just had. So when should we depart? At noon, about 3 hours later. You can rest until then. Moon said while he floated towards the makeshift kitchen to wash the dishes. While thinking if he should make more food in case the food that he previously saved up just before Katu came in was not enough. Katu, upon seeing him, hurriedly stood up. Wait, Sir Moon. I will wash it since you made the food. Her voice was frantic as if she just remembered something, and she hurriedly walked towards him with no previous sleepiness visible. Okay. He said, his voice a mixture of softness and tenderness as he floated away from the makeshift kitchen. When noon came around, they started their journey, bypassing mountains and rivers as they traveled. The sun was high up in the sky, yet it was hidden behind a sea of clouds, their shifting, intangible form leaving the world below in a muted gray haze. Not a single ray of sunlight broke through the dense canopy above. The wind howled through the forest, akin to the shrill scream of a banshee, biting Katu in her cheek and tangling her hair in icy fingers. Each gust blew away her makeshift coat as if trying to steal it away, its cold, piercing wind piercing through the fabric, fully embracing her body. Yesterday was blazing hell, now it is freezing hell. Just my luck. Katu thought in her mind, her little frame shaking as she walked. But she shook the thought out of her mind while muttering to herself. No use complaining if you can't change anything. So while hugging her body tightly to protect what little warmth she had in her, she continued her march, trailing behind Moon, since he had much sharper perception. Meanwhile, Moon just hummed joyfully as he traveled. Howling wind, akin to the shrill scream of a banshee, the piercing cold that accompanied it was not registered in Moon's brain. For him, today was just a cloudy day with quite a strong wind, a bit different from yesterday, which was the exact opposite with piercing hot sunlight that could be used to ignite a campfire if one used a magnifying glass. Only about 2 hours later would he learn that it was piercing cold. Until then Katu would silently suffer, with her pride as a goblin warrior and apprentice shaman preventing her from saying anything. Chapter 8 Is this the place? Moon asked Katu as he surveyed the surroundings, which were a sparse few trees and a few bushes that looked similar to a tumbleweed with not a single leaf visible, which he was not fond of. And the sparse few trees that were present weren't even full of leaves like the trees he used to see ever since he came here. Instead, it looked like the lower half of the tree's leaves were eaten by something, leaving the tree half naked. With the sun that radiated its intense heat without mercy, it made the surroundings even more desolate. The extreme lack of sound, whether from the insects or animals, only made it worse, making the surroundings even more desolate than it was. Yes. She answered after a second or two of indecision as if she wasn't sure this was the place where she lived most of her life, but in the end, she answered yes since she was sure that the route that they came on was right and some distinct landmarks all matched. Okay, so where is the place that you said housed Alpha Peak or High Alpha Low beings? Moon asked, without voicing his concern about her hesitation. Right about there, she said as she pointed towards a mountain that was visible in the distance. With the top half of the mountain filled to the brim with snow, heck, It was even snowing there as they spoke, despite the fact that in here it wasn't snowing. "Alright, let's go, no time to waste," Moon said as he turned a bit right and floated towards it. Kata just followed quietly from behind him, her eyes darting around as if confused about how it changed from the place that was in her memory into this. It had been a few days since they started traveling towards Katu's birthplace, and the journey was surprisingly peaceful, with little to no trouble. Although they were attacked a few times by other animals, they were so weak that Moon did not count it as trouble, since all it took for him to sweep them off was just one compact holy slash. By noon of the 5th day, they came to Katu's birthplace, which had changed quite a bit for her if her reaction was anything to go by. While they were traveling, they suddenly noticed quite a few footprints on a dirt road, small and human-like with sharp nails, probably from goblins or anything similar. "Did few of your tribesmen remain when your tribe left this place?" Moon asked after a second of thought. Kata shook her head in denial, but there was a hint of uncertainty hidden in it, as if she had a theory but wasn't sure if it was true or not. "No, not from what I remember. At best, 2 goblins were left, but there are at least a dozen footprints in here." Then any theory about who these footprints might belong to?" Moon inquired from her, a bit curious and fishing for information, not caring whenever it was just a tiny possibility, since even if the theory was proven false, it wouldn't do much harm to him. "I am not sure, but I have a theory. They might be from a tribe nearby from where I lived. They had a decent relationship with us in the past, but because of the food shortage, the relationship between my tribe and theirs became quite tense, with a few goblins getting killed every few weeks due to some small conflict," she said, her eyebrows furrowed while her eyelids tightened as she continued. "But they shouldn't be here, since my tribe and theirs had decided to move away from our birthplace to a new place at the same time as ours, with our tribe taking west and theirs taking east." His eyebrow at the end became tangled in confusion. Her eyes were a bit unfocused, as if unsure. "Do you want to investigate this before marching towards the snowy mountains?" Moon asked, noticing her hesitation and confusion, thinking that a day or 2 of delay at the longest wouldn't cause much concern. "Yes, thank you, Sir Moon," she said. After that they started following in their footsteps, which was quite easy considering that it rained quite heavily last night, causing ground that was usually just a mass of dirt and rock to turn into a big mass of mud. Granted, there weren't mud puddles everywhere, but because of how intense the rain yesterday was, there was quite a lot. First, the footsteps were a mess with quite a few facing different directions, but after following the trail a bit, it became better, with most of them walking in one direction after a while. The footprints soon reached a crossroad, with one of the trails going west towards the forest and the other east towards the river. When they reached the crossroad, Kata asked Moon, "Should we split?" Moon, upon hearing her question, did not immediately answer. Instead, he decided to think long and hard, since he had the feeling that something was wrong. The footprints that were left in the mud were quite shallow compared to Katu's, with Katu's footprint leaving about a 5 to 6 centimeter deep print, while the footprints that those goblins left were about 2 to 3 centimeters deep. And there is the fact that even since they came here, he did not see a single living animal. Heck, he heard an insect only a handful of times since coming here, making Moon have a bad feeling. "No, we won't," Moon replied unconsciously, even though he was still thinking, but after he realized a second later what he said, he decided to stick to it, thinking nothing would go wrong. "Okay," Katu replied, after which Moon took the lead in following the west route, since about 7 of the dozen or so goblins had gone this route, while the rest had gone the other way. The black, stormy clouds slowly filled the whole sky, causing the world to plunge into darkness, despite the fact that just an hour or 2 ago it was just a cloudy day with quite a bit of sunlight. A wind slowly started blowing from behind them, as if urging them to go faster towards their destination. The insect that they rarely heard since coming here started buzzing loudly, as if they were in celebration of what was about to happen. Maybe we should stop," Katu, in a low voice, suggested, her arms fidgeting as if nervous while her complexion was a bit pale, having a feeling that what was about to come wouldn't be something she would want to see. But, although Moon felt the sky darken as if a bad thing was about to happen to them, he also had the feeling that he would evolve into a physical being if he persisted a bit longer, so he just answered, "Just a few minutes and we will be there." After a few minutes, they did reach their destination, with the footsteps leading to a hut with quite a bit of wear and tear. It was once probably a feather-like white outer layered hut, not brown and dirty, but now it was just plain brown with mud here and there visible. Its surroundings probably once looked quite beautiful with nature everywhere, but it was just a desolate place with only a few tumbleweeds here and there. Moon and Kata surveyed the surroundings. They noted the half-fallen and decayed, probably, fence used to keep animals inside was empty with not a single footprint visible, while beside it lay a few things a bit similar to the hut that lay in ruins with most of them gone already decayed and grass growing on top of it. They slowly inched closer, slowly and steadily, and when they were about 30 meters away from the hut, a voice sounded from beside them. "Who are you? Identify yourself." A voice screamed, almost jolting Moon to unconsciously send in his compact holy slash towards it. But he stopped himself at the last second, the small training that he had done helping him as he stopped himself before he killed whoever screamed it. Paku?" Katu, who was beside him, asked, uncertainty evident in her voice as she inquired. "Katu, is that you?" The owner of the voice, who was in a hood that completely covered his body from head to toe, asked, disbelief evident in his voice as he inched closer. A thin, small hand came out of his hood. But suddenly he stopped as if he remembered something. He quickly turned around and walked back. His footsteps were fast and hurried, but after walking a few steps, he turned around and motioned towards Katu. "We need to get out of here fast. Hurry," he said. Katu looked at Paku, then slowly turned towards Moon, who just muttered, "Let's go." He whispered quietly in her ear so Paku couldn't hear him, although he didn't know why he still hadn't addressed him since he was a floating goddamn orb of holy light radiating a considerable amount of light. So they quietly followed after him, getting away from the hut as they followed him. Only the footsteps of Paku and Katu and the fierce wind were the only sounds evident as they walked away. Turning left and right, following the river, then turning right and going towards a clearing. Soon, about 20 minutes of non-stop, fast-paced walking later, they reached a small cave. Only then does Paku, who was in front of them, relax as he exhales a deep breath. "We should be safer now. What is happening, and why are you acting like this?" Katu, who had quietly kept her mouth shut for the past 20 minutes, immediately asked as soon as she noticed him relaxing. "So straight to the point, huh?" Paku said as he walked towards a clean area and sat down. The hood still covered his body fully, not revealing the slightest bit of his appearance. "Yes, straight from the beginning to the end." "All right," Paku said while leaning back slightly, with his back touching the wall. "It all began when our tribe had started traveling and seeking new land just like yours. At first, the journey wasn't hard or dangerous. We spent the night sleeping and the day traveling while using food that we had sparingly. Heck, we probably had almost 2 times the food your tribe had considering how bad your tribe was doing when you left," Paku said, his voice calm and steady, but after saying that, he stopped for a few seconds, causing the cave to fall into deep silence. Then the disaster struck. Most of the food was gone mysteriously in just one night, with none of the guards who were guarding it being aware despite all of them staying awake the whole night. And just a day after that, the chief was found dead in his hut, brutally murdered with all of his internal organs gone. Paku sighed heavily, but due to the obstruction caused by the hood, Moon and Katu only heard him sigh. "Only if I had known at that time what would have happened, I would have run without turning back." The hell began after that, with the food gone and the chief dead, all hell was released, loose with everyone pointing at one another, accusing them of causing it, causing bloodshed to start at every turn, while the little food that was left was getting lower and lower. Soon it all finished with not a single bit left. The moment it did, the situation changed from bad to worse as they started to resort to cannibalism. First it was the elders who had no strength and no time left on their side, then it was kids and babies who, while having a future ahead of them, had no strength to keep it. Finally, it was the weak one's turn. Paku started shaking rapidly with beads of sweat slowly falling into the ground as he shook. Just as I thought things couldn't get worse, an unusually strong troll appeared one day and demanded food from us every day, stating that if we couldn't find him food every day, he would hunt us down and eat us. Paku said, his voice weak yet frantic as he continued but in a self-mocking tone. "The reason it made us look for food for it instead of killing us and eating us is probably not because it was smart or something. It probably did not like the taste of us goblins, filled with filth and dirt." Katu and Moon quietly sat beside him as he recounted what had transpired since they parted ways. The despair and anguish were visible in the air surrounding Paku as he sat. Katu said, while turning towards Moon with a pleasing gaze, her eyelids dropping down and her mouth hanging low. And Moon understood what Katu meant with her gaze without needing to spell it out to him in words. "All right, I will help," Moon said, his deep and magnetic voice resounding in the cave as he said it. Paku, who sat beside them, jolted as if electricity coursed through him as he rapidly stood up and retreated. "Who are you? Where are you from?" Paku screamed, and the scream and the sudden jolt caused the hood that had completely covered his body tightly to slightly loosen up, specifically the face area, revealing his face, which had both of its eyes dug out, explaining to Moon and Katu why he did not address him when they first met despite the fact that Moon was an orb of holy light that glowed intensely. I must, no, it hasn't. Quite. Moon shouted, instantly silencing Paku, after which he turned to Katu and said to her, Calm him down, Katu. Katu, who was also startled into silence by Moon's shout, quietly nodded as she walked towards Paku and started patting his back while muttering. There, everything is fine. Sir Moon won't hurt you. He is nice. Chapter 9. After Katu reassured him and explained a bit, Paku slowly calmed down and understood that Moon meant no harm to him, at least for now. If the reassurance from Katu were to be believed, he might even help him. How? Paku asked, his voice quivering and cracking as if he could not believe it. We will kill that troll and point you and the rest of your tribe towards my tribe so you can go there. There is so much food there that you won't know what to do with it. Katu reassured Paku calmly, her voice soothing and gently akin to a gently flowing river, a thing which Moon had never seen. But because there was no need for her to be this soothing and gentle when they were traveling together, it made sense for Moon to have never seen such quality in Katu. After she said that, she slowly turned towards Moon and said, Right, Sir Moon? Her voice with an inquisitive tone, probing if she overstepped. Which Moon replied with, Yes, I will kill that troll. His deep, heavy voice sounds with a profound depth, with a natural resonance that immediately fills the room without an effort, making a word spoken by Moon to be effortlessly heard. Thanks. Katu said, breaking into a hearty smile with her mouth curving upwards in the shape of a half-moon while her eyes squinting. But she did not notice that he never said he would help the goblins or anything of that sort, he only said he would kill that troll. Because of her negligence and inexperience, she did not even think that Moon was playing a bit of a word game with her. Tell me everything you know about the troll. Moon demanded as he turned towards Paku the next second. Paku slowly nodded toward Moon as he started recounting what he knew without hiding anything. It spends most of the day just lazing around without moving much, except at night it sleeps. It usually eats some small animals and fish that we catch during the day. If not satisfied, it would eat one of us, and if we were to try to escape, it would hunt whoever escaped using its unusually sensitive nose, which can track whoever escaped with incredible precision. It is also really strong and fast. It also has amazing vitality. It shrugged off our poison, which we brew using venomous insects, without even feeling it. Is it all? Moon probed further. Yes, Paku replied. All right. Moon said as he turned towards the cave entrance and floated towards it slowly while thinking inside his mind. I shouldn't expect any detailed information from a goblin, although, from the information he gave me, I managed to scrape off a simple plan. I am so smart. Ragu the troll thought as he looked at the group of goblins beneath his feet, bowing before him like they should while shaking like baby birds in the snow. Worms. Ragu unconsciously muttered under his breath, but due to how deep, big, and majestic he was, the little muttering was heard throughout the cave, causing the goblin at his feet to shake even more. Despite what he muttered to the goblin, Ragu was satisfied with how much food they brought today, so he did not kill any of them or even hit any of them. Although the reason he did not hit them is not that he is that merciful, the reason is that goblins are so fragile that even a normal punch or slap from him would severely hurt or cripple them, so he had to stay his hands unless he wants to kill one of them. Then he slowly shifted his gaze to his right, where a bowl of food they brought today stood, which consisted of a few fish and a rabbit of considerable size, a food that he would have today, decent food he would say since he did not eat anything like this for quite some time. He slowly raised his hands towards it to take one of them with his mouth curving upwards in the form of a smirk, specifically the rabbit's leg since it had been a long time since he had eaten a rabbit's leg. With a satisfied smile, only for a beam of what seemed to be a light to penetrate the tent and destroy the bowl of food that he was about to grab. What? Ragu slowly muttered, confused and in disbelief at the fact that the only decent food he would have had for the past 2 weeks had disappeared so suddenly. The culprit being a beam of what appears to be light penetrating the tent and destroying it in an instant, not even enough time for him to blink. He stared at the place where the bowl once was with unfocused eyes, his hands that were about to grab the bowl still in the air, right on top of it, his fingers stretched in gesture in which he was about to grab. Sizzle sizzle slowly from the place below his hands, a smell of burned remains of the food entered his big nose, making him instantly come to his senses. When he came to his senses, the first emotion that entered his mind was profound disbelief at the fact that the food, which he considered a delicacy, was destroyed instantly, and then it was maddening rage as he accepted the fact that the food was completely gone, destroyed without a trace. Who? Ragu yelled loudly, his voice thundering like a cannonball, his face tightening with each of the veins on his face and body pulsing rapidly, akin to a coiling snake, as he got up. He reached out to the side of him, grabbed his club, and ran outside towards the direction in which the beam of light came from, which was pretty easy since there was a hole in the hut through which smoke was still floating. Roar. Ragu roared as he ran outside, his eyes bloodshot red and his mouth hung open with his saliva dripping onto the ground akin to foam, ready to kill and eat whoever shot that laser alive. And the moment he came outside, he instantly learned what shot the light. It was an orb of what appeared to be light, floating about 40 meters away. So the moment he identified the assailant, he ran towards it, grabbing his club with both hands as he ran. Doof doof every time Raghu touched the ground after each step, the ground shook under his feet, signaling to anyone that a being akin to a giant boulder was rushing. When he was about 5 meters away from the orb, he jumped while grabbing the club with both hands, ready to crush the orb the next second. But the orb, as if it did not see it, just materializes another orb similar to itself in front of it while creating what appears to be a shield between the two of them. Raghu, who was driven to mad rage akin to a burning volcano, did not care what the orb was doing. Instead, it focused all its strength and swung its club toward both orbs. Whoosh! Just as the club was about to make contact with both of the orbs, the orb in front exploded, with intense light akin to a grenade exploding right in front of it. The searing heat of the explosion first burned his front body, boiling his normally green skin with an orange hue into a combination of red and black, with the red being seared flesh and the black being the burned to a crisp part of his skin. Then it was the shock wave that sent him stumbling backwards like a ball for a few meters. While he was flying, he screamed like a pig that was being branded by a burning hot iron. Duff duff at last, after stumbling like a ball a few times backward, he finally stops and lies on the ground with the front of his body facing the sky for a few seconds with his eyes closed. But after a few seconds, he instantly opened his bloodshot eyes and sprinted towards the orb without a care, the club that was in his hands glowing a bit blue because he started using the mana enhancement. A secret technique of the chief of the tribe that he was part of. But he learned of it after the chief got old, and he tortured the way to learn it out of him and learned it. I will kill you. Raghu the troll screamed as he swung his bat. But the orb at the last second materialized a little orb on top of it, exploded it in a miniature explosion, and instantly managed to duck. Then the orb sent a few waves of holy light towards his abdomen section, making his skin, which had just gotten seared into red and black, into a flower of red, cutting the muscle and the fat under his skin. Raghu, without flinching and caring about the injuries that he just received, swung his club again, but this time pressing his body more against the orb, almost touching it, not giving it enough space if it decided to explode again. But the orb, as if it knew what was going on, instantly flew towards the sky, just barely dodging the swing that was directed towards it, but the club scraped a bit of it, causing the right side of the orb to lose its color a bit. Come back here. Raghu screamed as he jumped towards the orb while readying his club to swing once again. Swoosh! But alas, the sky was not the battleground in which he excels. So he failed to hit the orb and fell to the ground in failure. But it doesn't mean he lost. Even if the orb were to fly and bombard him with attacks non-stop, he wouldn't die. Trolls have one of the strongest regeneration powers in the familiar forest, akin to miracles to other races, with even lost limbs growing back in just a week or two. Raghu's regeneration power was powerful even among the trolls, and his just as well incredible stamina made him almost undefeatable in a prolonged battle. So even if he got hit a few times, it wouldn't matter much to him, but if his enemy, the orb, made one mistake and got hit by him into the ground, the next follow-up attack would without a doubt kill it. You will die. Raghu screamed while some lesser burned part of his body's seared skin slowly started to fall into the with new skin taking its place. Anyone who saw this would despair as Raghu's regeneration, which is powerful even among trolls, started working its magic. But he felt something unusual. He felt that he expended more stamina to regenerate, and he felt that some of the burned to a crisp parts of his body wouldn't recover without at least 10 or so minutes. But he pushed the concerns that came into the back of his mind, for he was Raghu the Butcher. Chapter 10, Transformation. Well, the first attack didn't hit the target, but it still got the job done. Moon thought as he fought the troll, which he learned its name was Raghu. A fitting name for a disgusting creature, with it spitting out saliva every time it roared and screamed curses at him relentlessly. But Moon paid no attention to it since there would be no benefit, even if he cursed back to drive him mad. The troll was already driven to deep fury because the delicacy the troll thought he would finally have in the past few weeks or so was destroyed. In the beginning, he did not plan on hitting the bolt to enrage the troll. He was aiming for Troll's face, but because of his not-so-good aim, it hit its bowl of food. But it was a welcome surprise to Moon considering how much it enraged the troll. Swoosh! A trunk of a tree was thrown towards Moon rapidly, akin to a speeding bullet, but Moon was faster than it as he managed to dodge sideways while shooting another beam of light toward Raghu, which Raghu received it with his body since it is exhausted beyond redemption. Raghu's in question was now a mess of flesh and scars, as most of his skin was already gone, and muscle and fat that filled its whole body were almost in the same condition with scars and tears dyeing it fully in red. Huff huff huff! Raghu the troll panted loudly, akin to a pig, while his body, at least where the sweat could still be produced, sweated like never before. What have you done to me? Raghu shouted towards Moon, who was floating in the sky, looking down on it with calmness. Moon was about to ignore Raghu's question, but he changed his mind a second later, thinking it wouldn't hurt to answer the probably last question it would have before it met its death, also with the side goal of gloating a bit towards the troll considering how much it cursed him through the fight. An attack made by my energy, specifically the energy that made up my body, has the passive effect of reduced healing if I so wish. Moon said, still not saying the word holy energy since he did not know if any being might hear him. Raghu had a shocked expression on his face with his eyes popping out like balloons while his mouth, which had its flesh stripped off, hung low. What? Huff, there isn't anything that can. And I poisoned you. Moon said, interrupting Raghu, who was about to deny it. The poison that Paku and a few others previously used to poison the troll unsuccessfully was used in this battle when they were fighting. The poison was splashed on him mid-fight, but Raghu just shrugged it off, thinking it was just water. This was a bit true since the poison Paku gave him wasn't that strong enough for Raghu under normal circumstances, but when he was fighting desperately while taking immense injuries, with the added fact that the poison penetrated him through his freshly received wound, it instantly upgraded the poison by at least 1 grade. You coward, worm, fucking. Raghu cursed as he panted, his eyes contrasting rapidly as the true realization that he was about to die settled in his mind. No, I will not, Raghu screamed as he got up to escape only for a massive wave of holy energy to come right at him, ready to sever his neck, which already had taken quite a few hits before, into 2 separate pieces. Raghu upon seeing it tried to block it with his arms, but the numerous injuries that he received jolted his hand mid-action, delaying him for just a second and marking his death. Tud-tud, the head of the troll flew high into the sky before falling to the ground like a brick, declaring Moon as the winner. What a stubborn pig! Moon muttered, only for the eldritch and holy voice to sound out right behind him as if it was waiting for him a second later. Its voice still gave Moon the creeps, akin to the endless eyes of the abyss, and heaven was looking right at him, without blinking and without rest. Well done, it said. When suddenly, just a second after the voice said, well done, in its monstrous voice, a change started to appear from within him. Slowly, the right side of his orb-like body started extending behind him, slowly taking the shape of a pristine white wing with a beautiful feather akin to a work of art. It was as if an extremely skilled craftsman with skills akin to a god spent one's entire life just carving out each of the feathers so it took the most perfect form it had. The middle part of Moon's body slowly took the shape of a ball, taking shape with the energy that made him up slowly disappearing as it did. After about a minute of taking shape and changing, his main body slowly took its final form. A white pristine big ball-like thing with a slit in front of it. When suddenly the slit in front of it suddenly opened, showing an eye filled with strange symbols. It had a cross in the middle with a pentagon around it. In each point of the pentagon, there were ancient letters of unknown meaning. The eyes themselves had golden pupils that glowed akin to the sun itself, and the sclera of the eyes had chains wrapped around it as if it was sealing something within the pupil itself. All in all, the angel that Moon became was a being who at first glance seemed holy and at second glance an eldritch monster. The aura of kindness and compassion that he now radiated somehow seemed warped as if the kindness was not directed to anyone but the god himself, and compassion felt like it was only directed towards its fellow angels instead of all living beings. Ouch, Moon thought in his mind as he floated in the sky, his wings gently flapping. The change that happened to his abilities was significant, akin to years of training happening to him in the blink of an eye. With his manipulation of holy energy reaching a whole other level, with him now capable of doing everything that he had previously done several times better and more. And the energy itself that he now had was of even higher quality than it was previously. However, it doesn't make sense since he was a literal orb of holy energy previously and should be better at holy energy. But he did not give it a second thought, leaving the fantasy world law to fantasy world laws. And the second biggest thing that happened was that he gained a new skill. All speak, the skill said, making him capable of speaking to anything sentient, heck, even the insects, although he doesn't know what the insect thought and if they could even converse in the first place. So he tried the skill, looking forward to being capable of speaking with anything without using the totem and mana to translate his voice. So Moon thought of the first thing that came to his mind and tried the skills towards the grasshopper beside him. Hello, little one. He said, hoping for a simple answer or anything like that showed that it understood him. He waited for 1 second, 2 seconds, then 3, only after 3 seconds did his mind register the fact that he, instead of saying hello as he intended, he instead said hello, little one. What the fuck? Moon, though. When suddenly he realized that he had forgotten to inspect his new body. The body in which he dreamt and wished for many days and weeks without rest. But because how he didn't feel anything strange or something was added to him, he unconsciously ignored it. So he turned around with the fervor of a deranged man as he looked for a small puddle or anything that could reflect his appearance. He looked around for a bit and found a small puddle, just barely enough for him to see his new appearance. Then he glanced at the puddle. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds he looked at himself and his new appearance, slowly from the tip of one wing to the other, as he examined his new appearance without saying or doing anything besides his wings gently flapping. After what seemed to be years, he exhaled deeply, almost as if he was about to puke out his lungs out of his mouth, at least in his mind, while muttering, "I at least have an eye now only arms, legs, torso, and face are left." But because the skill, all speak, is still active, it came out as, "I, at last, have a body, soon." Suddenly from beside him, a small hesitating voice sounded. "Sir Moon?" He turned to the owner of the voice and saw Katu, who was a few meters away, scared and intimidated. Heck, even the words scared and intimidated do not do it justice, considering the fact that her legs were shaking crazily while beads of sweat fell on her face crazily. Katu Moon said in his normal voice, using the totem since he did not want to scare her more than he intended to already using his new skill. Then from the corner of his eye, about 10 meters behind Katu, he saw a group of goblins huddled together with Paku in the lead, cowering as they sat. And the moment Moon saw them, he suddenly felt a huge disgust akin to how one would feel when one saw a maggot feasting on feces rising within him, making him want to kill, squish, and burn all of them the next second. The fact that they were all together did not help him at all, instead making him want to kill them even more. The logical part of Moon wondered quietly inside his mind, where is this feeling coming from? This isn't natural and the like, but the emotional part was so strong that the logical part had to give away its main seat to it powerlessly. Katu, who was beside Moon, suddenly had a bad feeling as if something bad was about to happen. Chapter 11. Katu looked at the ongoing battle between Moon and the troll quietly while hiding behind a fallen tree about 100 or so meters away. The cool air of that night was her only company since the rest of the goblins venomously refused her request for help, saying that a great ancestor said chance for freedom had arrived, and they would not be betting it on something like the result of a fight. Which extremely infuriated her since she thought that they would at least be together with her since Sir Moon fought the troll in the first place for them. But she was also powerless to force them to come and help them fight since she couldn't overpower them nor convince them. She could defeat several of them easily because she was in her peak condition with a weapon ready while the other goblins were starved and weakened. But the quantity became a problem since there were over a dozen goblins, and there was only one of her, so she sneaked towards the battlefield alone, although Paku said to her that he would convince them. Considering how venomously they refused, she did not have much hope. While she was going towards the battlefield, she unconsciously reflected on her stupid request for Sir Moon, which was to kill an unusually strong troll for some unknown goblins, to which Sir Moon did not have any relation or obligation other than her selfish request. But Sir Moon, despite her selfishness and childishness, graced her by fighting that troll in a life-or-death battle. Meanwhile, the goblin, which they were helping, did not even help them. Instead, it deserted them at the first opportunity. An act that she utterly despised now that she thought about it, but in the end not all fault lay on the goblins who left her since in goblin culture, it was every goblin for themselves. With even father and son, mother and daughter fighting against each other when it comes to it. So she has half the blame for making Sir Moon fight that troll. While she was watching the fight, she noticed that Moon had the absolute upper hand, with Moon the one attacking and the troll dodging and attacking by throwing things like the trunk of a tree or a boulder in the fight, which brought her endless excitement and happiness. "Go, Sir Moon, go," she quietly muttered under her breath, even though in no way would Moon hear any of it. But in reality, the situation was not quite as she thought it was. The absolute upper hand that she thought Moon held was not true. In fact, the truth is that Moon and Troll are in a battle of attribution with Troll's regeneration and stamina versus Moon's energy was locked in a battle with Moon doing the most of the attacking with Troll receiving it. The situation continued for a few minutes with Katu shouting out in worry every time Moon got close to getting hit by Troll's attacks while cheering every time Moon's strong attack hit the Troll. Soon the Troll fell when Moon severed the Troll's neck with a swish of a giant golden wave attack. When the Troll fell, Katu quickly moved out of her hiding spot while dropping the makeshift smoke bomb that was in her hand in case the situation turned unfavorable for Moon. Her feet tick-tocked against the ground as she sprinted, the cool night air brushing against her hair gently while a crescent curved, big smile adorned her face without change. When she was about 10 or so meters away, she halted, her expression one of pure shock as she gazed at Sir Moon, who was changing. No, more like evolving. Slowly a pair of untainted, pristine, pure white wings came out of Sir Moon, while the middle part of his body took the shape of a ball, akin to a sun, as it radiated so much light that Katu for a second thought the day came early. Wow! She slowly muttered as she gazed at Sir Moon, who was slowly evolving. It was beautiful and sacred, akin to mythical heavenly angels being born. But from the corner of her vision, she saw something that was quite disturbing. She saw the troll who was killed by Moon slowly dissolving into smoke. And the smoke was going towards him slowly, helping him reshape his body. First, it was the troll's skin, then it was the flesh underneath it. Little by little they evaporated, akin to how water evaporates under fierce sunlight. Then finally, after 10 or so seconds, only the bones were left. And it looked like the bones were going to evaporate soon, judging by the fact that smoke was coming out of the bones. When suddenly from the skull of the troll what seemed a soul of the troll came out. The expression it had on its face was one of absolute terror as it flew towards Sir Moon, specifically Sir Moon's left wing. With an audible sound, the soul of the troll hit the wing of Sir Moon. But it left no visible marking that indicated that it did anything. No, she thought a second later as she narrowed her eyes, almost squinting as she observed Moon's wings. On the lower part of the wing, on one of the feathers, she saw the face of the troll imprinted on the wing. It had the last expression the troll had when it was devoured by Sir Moon, which was one of terror. While she was observing, Moon had finally finished evolving. He had an untainted, pristine white pair of wings akin to the purest of clouds, with an eye as its main body. The eye had strange symbols and chains in them, and the sclera had chains around them that somehow gave Katu the feeling that it was using it to seal whatever was inside of it in hopes that the world outside would not face whatever was inside. She slowly inched closer while her leg was shaking for an unknown reason, since it is Sir Moon without a doubt. But for unknown reasons she was scared. It could be the fact that the soul of the troll was devoured by him, or even the fact that he became something akin to a monster even by the familiar forest standards, or it could be both. While she was inching closer, Moon suddenly started looking around, darting left and right, and before long, as if he found what he was looking for, he gently flew to a puddle. After looking at himself for a few seconds, she heard him mutter, "I, at last, have a body, soon." Its voice has a dreadful vibe hidden in it, even though at first glance it seemed calm and filled with kindness. Finally mustering her courage, she said his name. Sir Moon? But it came out as weak and filled with hesitation, which in all honesty portrayed her current feelings perfectly. The monstrous angel turned towards her instantly, its eyes shone as the sun itself locked into her for a few seconds, freezing her body and blood instantly. After what seemed like minutes, the angel said, "Katu," in Sir Moon's normal deep and magnetic voice with none of the eldritch and monstrous apparent. This caused Katu to relax instantly as her tense body loosened up. Then Sir Moon turned right, looking a bit behind her. She followed his gaze a second later, looking at Paku and the rest of the goblins huddled together. Paku did manage to convince them, huh? She muttered before looking at Sir Moon. She noticed that Sir Moon was looking intensely at the goblin, akin to how one looked at a worthless piece of trash that no one wanted and the world would be better off without it. At least that was what she managed to gather from Sir Moon's one eye. And it gave her a bad feeling as if something bad was about to happen. Sir Moon then slowly floated towards them, his wings gently flapping, sending a gentle wind around him as he floated. When he was about 5 steps away, Moon asked them, "So you are the goblins that Paku talked about?" He slowly asked. The sudden question and the appearance of Moon, who, in all honesty, looked disturbing whenever which angle one looked at him, seemed to scare them as they all hid behind Paku, shaking profusely. Meanwhile, Paku just stood there with a stiff expression. Yes, these are the goblins from my tribe. This goblin here is X, and this one. Was my question directed towards you?" Moon asked, interrupting Paku mid-speech. His giant golden eyes bore down on Paku relentlessly without blinking, causing Paku to sweat like never before, causing him to freeze. Why is Sir Moon acting like this, and why are my tribesmen so scared? Paku wondered, but whether it is a blessing or not, the fact that he can't see allowed him to keep his cool. Then Moon shifted his gaze towards the goblin who was still hiding behind Paku. With a higher volume than before, Moon asked again, "Are you all from Paku's tribe?" Which caused them to cower even more. They made all kinds of noises in response to Moon's question, but none of them answered Moon's question, causing Moon to start losing his patience even more rapidly. The disgust and anger that bordered on racism that came to be after the transformation were the first reasons. "Answer me!" Moon yelled after a few seconds of silence. This worked as the goblin hiding behind Paku sprang up and started answering. "We are, my lord. Spare me, please, oh great one. We are. Moon looked at them, his gaze dropping heavily on the messy side in his mind. Let's just get this over with, he thought as he decided to ask only one question and be on his way. The unknown stench of filth that they were radiating caused him to gag despite having only one eye as a body. With even Paku and Kata not being an exception to the stench that he is smelling, despite not having a nose. Although the stench coming from Katu is much less compared to the rest, it is almost invisible when these disgusting creatures are in front of Moon. Those who have eaten your kin, raise your hand. The goblins looked at one another, confused as to why this being was asking them to raise hands if they had eaten their kin. But some of them, fearing that more waiting will cause Moon to kill them all, 3 goblins out of the dozen raised their hands weakly, with hesitation visible to the naked eye as their eyes darted left and right, hoping that they made the correct decision by raising their hands. Moon just looked at the three who raised their hands and the rest who did not slowly. Not believing for even a little bit that the rest had never eaten their kin. "Did the rest of you not eat?" Moon inquired, his voice neutral and calm. The remaining goblins who did not raise their hands nodded rapidly while bowing, some kneeling. "Yes, I have never eaten my kin." "Yes, Lord, I did not. I never even dreamed of eating," they said pleadingly, akin to a dog wagging his tail to his owner, while the three who raised their hands started regretting that they raised them, with one of them even slowly lowering his hands while changing position. Moon, who looked on quietly, noticed that black smoke was rising from them every time they lied. The wisp of black smoke rose from where their mouth was located. Although he should have been confused if suddenly black smoke started coming out of the goblin, for some reason, be it inhaled knowledge or instinct, he instantly knew that the black smoke was coming out of their mouth because they were lying to him. But he did not voice it out, he just looked at them one by one and counted. When those who hadn't said anything met his gaze, they started chirping like little birds. Even the one who had already raised their hands backtracked. I was forced, at that time." He quietly watched. Finally, when all of the dozen or so goblins were finished, he looked at Paku, signaling to him that he was no exception. Paku froze for a second before saying, "I did not eat it, I only ate the food that I secretly stored." Finally at last Moon shifted his gaze to Katu, although he didn't think she did eat it. Because her mother was venomously angry when one of her tribes suggested eating the dead elders. Heck, he even saw her beating that guy up after the meeting behind in the clearing with the guy begging mercy while Kale just shouted at him. "I only have a few rules in this tribe, and you broke 3 of them today. What next would you?" Katu jolted under his gaze, her gaze unfocused while her shoulders slumped while replying. "No, I have never eaten any." Moon then shifted his gaze back to the dozen or so goblins and said, "Except Katu, all of you lied." His voice echoed through the night sky, akin to a final judgment for them. The gentle breeze that once filled the sky around them ceases as if they are accepting his judgment. While the insects that chirped without care grew quiet as if foreboding something ominous. Then he slowly shifted his gaze to Paku. Even you, if they had not eaten their kin once in their lifetime, Moon would have spared them, although he already had little hope for it considering what happened to him and their tribe. He had said eating children and elders of one's own race with not much emotion, almost dry, almost as if most of them had done that. He at first just planned on beating up those who did that act, but the disgust he felt for some reason after Revolution felt made him change his decision. And the small gnawing in the back of his head that is whispering to him to torture them and kill them did not help at all, only making it worse. So Moon gently floated up higher and started radiating an immense amount of holy energy at them in the form of a light beam, causing the goblins, including Paku, to burn. They screamed akin to a burned banshee as they fell to the ground, some of their hands thrashing around in hopes that they would make it away while some covered their eyes and faces. Their skin slowly got seared and fell off after it turned black. Those who unfortunately had their eyes open when Moon started spreading holy energy had their eyes turn into a white puddle, but Moon did not stop. The goblins started trying to escape, some crawling while some more physically capable sprinting, but Moon materialized the energy around them in the shape of a rope, instantly binding them. Moon did not stop, nor did he give any mercy, he just looked at them calmly. Their burning and crying form reflected off his pupils as he watched them. Finally, after they all burned to a complete crisp, he stopped, the smell that almost suffocated him gone along with the gnawing noise that was whispering behind his neck. Instead, satisfaction remained, although Moon thought that he shouldn't have this feeling. But he did not resist it. The cool breeze of the night embraced him again as he slowly floated downwards. The grass surrounding the swayed every time his wings flapped, with only Moon and Katu remaining. "Let's go," Moon said as he gently flapped his wings and floated away. Katu, who saw this, slowly got up and followed Moon. Her body was stiff and rigid, akin to a robot, as she followed after him. Her eyes trailed across the remains of those unfortunate. Their charred remains, akin to burned coal, were the only indication that a living being was once here. Chapter 12. Under gentle sunlight with almost no clouds in sight, Moon and Katu could be seen sitting on top of a massive dead tree with a width of nearly 2 meters inside a jungle-like area of the familiar forest, which is habituated by a gorilla-like magical beast akin to a mini version of King Kong. Their average height reached 3 meters, and their strength matched their mighty size, with them reaching Piccolo class when they reached adulthood, making them true rulers of this part of the forest. At least that was what the gorillas thought before Moon massacred them in the name of testing his new strength. Their body, which they thought to be an unbreakable shield akin to a boulder, was broken and sliced every time Moon materialized a cold weapon and swung at them or cut them up using a wave of light. Their incredibly powerful punches, which they thought to be capable of killing anything but the mightiest of other races, did nothing but scratch Moon despite their desperate effort. With every member of their species that Moon killed, they attacked with double the ferocity and fury as if the dead ones were to make up for it, but it was all in vain. They stopped coming, huh? Moon thought as he waited for his holy energy to regenerate, which had become a bit slower, taking an hour or so to top off if he ever became fully out of it. Although he found a few ways to increase the speed at which he regenerates holy energy, such as Moon slowly shifted his gaze and looked at the dead remains of a few gorillas. Their body bisected into several sections, with their internal organs, such as the intestines, stomach, and the like, becoming a feast for flies as they ate and planted their eggs on their remains with gusto and relish. Then from the remains of the corpses, specifically from their skulls, a white fog-like thing started coming out of their bodies and floated towards Moon with the last expression they had when they were live on their faces, with most of them being filled with wide eyes and mouths hung low as if they were roaring with a few tears running down their faces, getting absorbed by Moon. Only those who are middle class could be stored, and the rest would just help me recover, huh? Moon thought as he rested with 6 extra little faces on his left wing, right beside the troll. His mind is idling away as he sat. It has been a few days since then he transformed, and he spent the time familiarizing himself with his new power. Experimenting as he traveled towards the city. He bulldozed towards the city with confidence in his strength, almost going straight towards the city, and only in 2 parts of the forest did he take a bit of a detour, and he should be arriving at the city by tomorrow with the speed they are going. The last bit of their soul was absorbed as Moon started flapping his wings and started floating up. "Let's go," Moon said as he started slowly flying, while Katu, who looked a lot better after a few days, followed after him. "Okay, Sir Moon," she chirped as she sprang up from her seat on the massive tree. So they resumed their journey towards the city, with Katu skipping down the road like a little child while Moon gently flapped his wings every few seconds to fly. "Sir Moon, I wonder if those strong, scarred ones will appear more?" she asked as she turned towards him. "Probably won't, since we've killed all 6 tribe chiefs," Moon said to her. Katu quietly nodded at him as she resumed looking at the road, with the trophies that she got from them dangling proudly on her. A golden amulet, a golden ring with a diamond of considerable size embedded in it, and a few other things that Moon couldn't use and gave to her as a present. Unknown to them, about 800 or so meters away on a distant hill, about 100 or so gorillas could be seen gazing at them with their fists clenched tightly and their bodies shaking with suppressed rage and frustration. But their eyes conveyed entirely different emotions, glowing with frustration at their honor being stepped on without care and their powerlessness of being unable to do anything to claim it even if they sacrificed their lives. Among the gorillas, a white-old gorilla who looked to be the leader, standing in front of all of them, slowly turned around and walked away going down the hill while muttering just loud enough for most of them to hear. "Let's go, we need to determine the new chief and count all remaining," prompting the other gorillas to turn around and follow the old gorillas. Their backs were sagged, and their limbs were heavy and slow as they followed after him while casting a weak shadow on the ground. "Tan tan ta ta tan tan," Kata hummed as he bounced on the road. The soft sunlight fell right on top of her head, right on her crown, as she bounced about. Her face was one of satisfaction as she hummed. "What are you humming?" Moon, who was flying beside her, asked. "A song," she replied. "Why are you only humming the lyrics?" Moon asked. "Because I don't know the name or the words of the song." Moon, who after hearing her reply, for some reason, felt a déjà vu as if something like this happened before, making him unconsciously reduce the rate at which he flapped his wings, dropping him about 20 or so centimeters below the height that he flew normally. But he shook it off and started flapping his wings again, returning to his usual height. "A déjà vu," Moon slowly muttered as he slowly flew. Then suddenly from beside them, about 10 meters away, a woman's voice that is quite familiar to Moon sounded. "Breaking Dawn, the name of the song is Breaking Dawn." "Gale, the mother of Katu," replied while coming out from behind a tree, with a little bit of dirt and leaf adorning her otherwise beautiful and fair hair and shoulder. "So it was you that was following us, huh?" Moon said, his gaze locking on to Kale and observing her. Meanwhile, Kale studied Moon in return, her eyes narrowing into thin slits in the process. His appearance was both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a figure with pristine white wings resembling clouds and an eldritch eye as a body with glowing symbols of unknown meaning in its eyes. He seemed like a being conjured straight out of the imagination of a young goblin, making her question her own sanity despite seeing him with her own eyes. What unsettled her even more was the surreal confirmation of his identity. For the past 30 minutes, she had been observing him through a bird's eye view, noting every interaction and detail to know if her suspicion was correct. Now, standing face to face with him, her mind finally accepts that he is Moon, no matter how crazy it is. "You have changed a lot since I last saw you," Kale said with a little smirk adorning her face while crossing her arms. Yes, I have changed quite a bit. Moon replied back, his heavy and penetrating gaze falling on her face, causing the smirk to slowly disappear from her face. Although he did not intend to make her uncomfortable, but because of his appearance, it just happened. So after he answered, he asked the question that he had. What are you doing here? I thought you intended to stay in the tribe. Kale just shrugged her shoulder nonchalantly with the bland expression on her face upon hearing his question. Well, I thought so at first, but after Katu left, I realized I felt no attachment nor duty towards the tribe. So I left the tribe after finishing a few businesses. Katu, who had been beside the two of them, interjected. So, how did you find us? We are going east towards the city instead of going south. Kale, with a bit of a mischievous expression on her face, while waving her hand in front of Katu, replied. It is a goblin secret. Mom. Katu whined at her mother with her cheek puffed with frustration. Clearly showing that something like this happened in the past. What do you need, my dear? Kale asked, instantly changing her face and body language to that of a clueless mother with her eyebrow raised and eyes widened, asking what her daughter wanted. Moom. Katu whined again, this time a bit louder, and her face red. Kale, in response to her, just raised her hands in mock surrender. Okay, I will tell you. She said while eyeing the treasures that adorned her daughter with a fake greedy expression while rubbing her thumb against her fingers in a gesture of money. But it will cost you. Hump. Kata humped immediately after she said that, after which she crossed her arms and turned around, locking her gaze into the clouds. Not intending to give up her treasure over a petty secret, which she did not even know if she could even learn. Heck, even if she did not give up her treasure, her mother would eventually teach her if she could learn it since they would probably be traveling together, she silently thought to herself. However, if one looked at Katu's face closely, one could notice that her eyes were slightly twitching and she was tapping her arms. Trying to resist the temptation. How about we travel while conversing? Moon suggested, looking at Katu and Kale in turn to see if they agreed with his suggestion. Understood, Sir Moon. Kale responded to him while nodding slightly. Okay, Sir Moon. Katu said as she turned to him. After that, they resumed their journey toward the city with an additional company in the name of Kale. With her as a new addition, the journey instantly became much more relaxing and enjoyable for everyone. On the journey, Kale would make some light-hearted jokes and share some knowledge that Moon or Katu did not know of, making them question why they did not think of this sooner. Heck, she even helped Katu to cook and prepare a bed for Moon, although at first he refused, but under Kale's intense insistence, he gave in, so Moon that night slept on a big bed with leaves and branches as the body of the bed and animal skin and hide as the sheet of the bed. Making him instantly fall asleep, although in reality he still can't sleep but he instantly fell into a sleep-like state, his mind zoning out and becoming a bit cloudy. About 3 meters away from Moon, while lying on her own bed, Katu reflected on her own mother Kale's strange behavior. In the past, while she would occasionally make jokes and have some fun with her, today it was a whole other story. The whole time they traveled, a relaxing, slight smile never left her mother the entire time, and her body was relaxed and calm, as if a weight had fallen off her shoulder. Wait? Katu wondered while slightly raising one of her eyebrows. Tribe maybe? She thought, after which she turned towards her mother, who was lying beside her, and hugged her tightly. Her arms wrapped around her hips as she pulled herself closer. Tomorrow morning they came to the city almost 4 hours before their predicted time. Making Moon a bit happy since he was getting a bit tired of always traveling, no matter how fun it was. Is that the city? Katu wondered out loud with stars glowing in her eyes and her mouth in the shape of an O as she gazed at the city. In the distance, about 3 or 4 kilometers away, stood the walls of the city, about 5 or 6 meters tall, all made out of big rocks or boulders, with some small bits of grass and moss growing on it. While along the walls stood watchtowers, with wooden trunk of a tree as a support, it stood above the wall, filled with guards vigilantly looking for any sign of attacks. Meanwhile, inside the city stood 3 castles with flags that represented different monsters. An orc, a lizard man, and a mink. Each castle had its own unique design, different from all others. The orc had the skulls of giant animals as decoration, and the lizardman had a water fountain and waterfall in the castle, while the minks had towering spiral watchtowers. Did not know what to write for minks. All in all, under the bright and intense sun, it looked beautiful, magnificent even. Making any local monster who has never seen a city watch with gaped mouth in astonishment when they first see it. Outside the city there was a small settlement akin to a village, which while much better than any tribe that Moon had seen but right next to the city. It looked kind of underwhelming in comparison. But still a village of considerable size and population nonetheless. Yes, my dear. Kale answered Katu, the edge of her mouth curving upwards in the shape of a light smile as she gazed fondly at the city. Alright, let's go. Moon declared loudly beside them, his deep voice vibrating through them as he gently flapped his wings and started flying towards it. But if you look closely you can notice that he was going faster than usual with his wings flapping more frequent. Showing that even he is feeling excited at the prospect of finally entering true civilization. Gale, upon hearing him, surfaced an awkward face mix of awkwardness and previous slight smile. I don't think you can go in. She said, her voice just barely reaching Moon, making Moon stop right in his tracks. Chapter 14, A Tour of the City. Without Moon the McMoon turned towards Gale, his pupils that were in the shape of a cross shifting to Gale. Why? Gale raised her right arm and scratched the side of her face, thinking of how she should say it to him without offending or getting misunderstood by him for a second. It is because of your appearance, which, while attractive and magnificent, will bring trouble for us. You know what I mean? Moon nodded at her answer, at least a nod that a flying eyeball could give. Fully understanding that his appearance could bring trouble that is of a much higher magnitude than he could currently handle. But because of his excitement at finally entering a civilization, he forgot about it for a second. If he were to enter the city with his appearance, someone or something might recognize him as an angel, although he secretly thinks that anyone who isn't from outside the forest or a being who can identify holy energy won't even think that he is an angel in the first place since he is so much different from normal angels, with only wings being the only indication. Nevertheless, if some manage to identify him, they might alert those high-grade or higher monsters, thus planting a big red flag on top of him. I understand, then I will wait here while you two go and gather some basic information. Come back here when the sun sets. All right. Katu, who was beside them, raised her eyebrow and turned towards her mother. Why would Sir Moon's appearance bring trouble? Is there a special reason? Why don't we talk while going towards the city? Kale turned towards Katu with a bit of a forced smile. Not liking the fact that she had to explain it to Katu while Moon was right beside them. Although inside she doesn't think that Moon would get angry over something as mundane as appearance getting criticized by Katu's random comment, since from her knowledge of her daughter she would say anything that would come to her mind, so if she were to explain it to Katu, she will probably say things like, "So he is that ugly?" An innocent and ignorant gesture with no bad intention behind it, but it still might make him upset. However, if he is capable of hiding his wings like normal angels, they could bring him to the village without a problem. But how do the angels even make their wings disappear in the first place? Do their wings transform, or do they not have a wing in the first place but materialize it when needed? A sudden question with no answers that she could confidently answer appeared in her mind, making Kale unconsciously doubt her own knowledge of angels. Since even her teacher, who taught her this knowledge, has never seen an angel herself. She shook her head, forcing herself to return to the present. Okay. Kata chirped, without caring or even taking any hints. So they turned around and walked towards the village, while mid-road, Kale explained everything she needed to know to Katu. Accompanied by a severe warning of what would happen if she didn't keep her mouth shut. Kata answered back with a serious nod of her own. A few minutes after that talk, they reached the village. Which looked much better up close, with two-story wood or rock buildings of a variety of styles and signs displaying anything one needs. Bar, restaurant, armor or weapon shop, blacksmith, and inns. Which was quite a lot, but considering how many intelligent monsters go in and out of the village every day, it was perfectly normal. Meanwhile, Kata just looked left and right with stars in her eyes, pointing out one interesting thing after another, since everything was a new thing to her. Look at that, r.e.sta.rant. Is that the mythical place that sells food? Gale, who was beside her, just shook her head every time something like this happened and answered any question she had calmly. Meanwhile, beside them, those who lived in the village just looked at her for a second before resuming what they were doing. Since every day something similar to this happens. Although those who are so vocal about it are rare. So after they traveled around a bit, Kale led Kata to a bar named Dine and Fine. A two-story wooden bar with the upper floor being an inn. In some parts of the wall, there was moss growing on it, indicating that those who own this are not that clean. With some scars and dents that looked like they came from a brawl, showing newcomers what to expect in a place like this. The moment Katu and Kale entered, a fishy smell blasted their nose, akin to one that came from cheap seafood, along with the intense bitter smells of alcohol. The sweat and the heat that the place had was the cherry on top, making any monster who had a sensitive nose gag if they came here unprepared. However, for both Katu and Kale, it did not make them uncomfortable since they daily smelled things much, much worse than this. Although the number of beings who inhabited the bar was a thing that was alien to Katu. You fucker, you just drank my drink. A being that looked like it was a dog-human hybrid, better known as a kobold, yelled while grabbing a small dagger that was on his wrist. His teeth gritted tight, and a low growl escaped from his mouth as if he was about to pounce on the orc the next second if he did not give him a valid reason. The orc who drank the kobold's drink just turned to the kobold with narrowed eyes, neither yelling back nor going for the weapon that sat beside him. Instead, he just narrowed his eyes slightly while his mouth curved a bit downwards. "Fuck you." The ORC suddenly yelled, jolting Katu, while shooting his fist toward the kobold akin to a bullet. His fist made a faint sound of air being cut as he drove his fist. Boom! The orc's fist slammed the kobold right in the muzzle, causing it to dent backward while its front teeth shot out like coins, while also sending him flying right into the wall. Duff! The kobold hit the wall like a pancake that was thrown across the room. The wall that received the brunt of the impact creaked as if it was about to collapse the next second, while also sending splinters and pieces of the wall everywhere, causing not a few drinks to be spoiled with dust that was caused by this spectacle. Although those who would mind this little bit of dust are rare in the bar. After a second or two of smoke falling down, the rest of the monsters in the bar could see what happened to the poor kobold, who did not know his place and who he was messing with. The kobold had its muzzle completely crushed, causing the kobold, who in normal circumstances looked like a normal dog, to look like a pug. Its eyes were white, and a little bit of foam could be seen leaking from the kobold. Its body, although a bit better than its head, was still not in good condition, because the part of the wall that he had hit had a knife dart, in which several knives were embedded. His torso had several bumps that the blunt side of the knife probably penetrated. One of his legs dangled like a loose wire, showing that it was broken. "Ha ha 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 ha, stupid dog, ha ha ha, look at him, he is embedded into the wall, ha ha." The bar instantly became filled with laughter and joy as if they had seen a comedy show instead of a being getting crippled. Those who were sitting with drinks stood up and started bumping each other's drinks as the chatter of the bar resumed. Those who were playing cards previously just continued without a care. Meanwhile, Kata quietly gazed at the kobold with intense focus, her back, which was previously straight as a rod, bending slightly as if she was about to rush, while her right leg slowly retreated backward as she took a running pose. Right as she was about to dash, Gale put a hand on her shoulder. "You can't eat him. So don't try to steal him," instantly causing Kata to come to a halt. Then she slowly turned towards Gale with a puffed up cheek and big, watery eyes. "Why? Do only the winners get to eat it?" Gale, upon seeing her daughter like this, regretted not teaching her some common sense that one should abide in a big settlement with multiple races living together. "No, you can't eat any monsters who are capable of speech in this place." "Why? Rules here are like this." Gale exhaled as she grabbed her daughter and started dragging her towards the counter. Katu, who was getting dragged, just looked on at the kobold with longing in her gaze. Gale came to the counter and started asking some simple questions while slipping some glowing wooden coins every time the bartender stopped or slowed down. However, sometimes when the bartender stopped speaking, she did not do anything, as if she knew that the bartender was just trying to fool her. The times in which the bartender stopped reduced as he talked. After about 30 or so minutes and 20 or so coins later, she turned around and went out of the bar, while still dragging her daughter by the arm, since Kata still hasn't given up on the free meal. A habit akin to an engraved instinct that is birthed because of the environment that she grew up in. Moon would have thought of something like this if he were beside them. Although even if he were here, he would be so busy trying to resist his instinct to kill and burn all of them that he probably won't even notice this. After that they walked around the village a few times, going in and out of several establishments. Inn, blacksmith, and 2 taverns. In the inn and the blacksmith, Gale spent another 20 or so coins, and while in the 2 taverns, Gale and Kata just ate some food while listening to the conversation that was going on around them. "Did you hear? The Thunder Rabbit is nearing its time. Huh, a pity, with his passing what would become of this place? Hope the next head won't be from the Orc or Lizard Man clan. I heard that a powerful monster was going around killing anything that stood in its way, and it is going straight to the city. Do you think we should be worried? The Orc clan is frequently going in and out of the blacksmith. I hope nothing bad happens. Hey, wanna trade wives? I am bored of her and want to change the taste. Mom, what is this made of? This is so delicious." Katu exclaimed with a bit of rice stuck right beside her mouth. Turning Gale's attention that was initially focused on the conversations taking place around her to her daughter's question. "Oh, its name is pike, a food that is made using rice, pork, and something that is called hot sauce. Oh, it is so delicious. Can we eat this every day? Please. If Sir Moon agrees to it, then why not? Really? It's a promise, all right. It's a promise." She slowly shook her head at her daughter's antics while the edges of her mouth curled up slightly, and then she looked to her right through the window, where she saw that orange sun gracing the sky as it dyed the world the color of orange. The roofs, houses, signs, and people are all dyed in orange as they go about their business. But some like her looked on at the sun as it set. The wind stopped, and the peaceful came around as she sat. After you finish, let's go, Sir Moon must be waiting. Chapter 14. But no matter what you choose, romance will be a subplot at best. The main plot is unleashing horror beyond the stars. That is a biblically accurate angel upon the world. Though be warned, the early chapters won't have much of this. Since Moon is weak and world building is happening. Heck, even character development is still going on. Now a coat. Moon thought as he willed holy energy to take on the shape of a coat similar to that of a normal fancy coat one would see people wearing. And the holy energy followed his command and slowly took on the shape of a coat. First the hem of the coat, then it was the body, and finally, after it took shape, the collar. But because of Moon's inexperience, the coat had a rigid texture akin to a towel that had dried completely. But it was infinitely better than what it was when he was an orb of light, since when he was an orb of light, he could only create armor that had the texture of a cube, a bit similar to that of Moon's childhood game, Minecraft. Now after he transformed into an angel, at least he thinks he is an angel, he could create much finer detail with less effort. Heck, if he were trained for a week or two, he could probably make that fancy armor that he used to see in video games. Although even if he did create it, he wouldn't wear it since a flying eyeball with wings wearing armor would look ridiculous, although if he was alone, he might just try it. At least the shape is right, now the texture and make it capable of moving like normal clothes. Moon focused on the coat, trying to make it better. But from the corner of his eye, he saw the faint shadow of Katu and Kale going towards him, prompting him to instantly stop what he was doing. After 30 or so seconds, Kale and Katu approached him. But he noticed an odd thing. Katu's stomach was bloated like a stuffed pig, and she was huffing and puffing as if she had just done intense exercise. Huff, puff, huff. Kale seemed to have noticed Moon's gaze. She just ate too much. All right. Moon muttered, shifting his gaze to Kale to know what information she managed to gather today. And depending on what she had learned, he would change his plans accordingly. If the city has ultimate class beings, then he would retreat into the wild until he reached at least peak high class if there is none. Then he would try to gather any information about ways to leave the underworld. If there is totally no way to leave the underworld in the city, then he would leave and then train in the wilderness. When he was strong enough, he would approach the devil or any other being who lives in the underworld and is capable of leaving the underworld. Since new angels being born is such a rare thing, heaven will probably be willing to pay a high price to recover them, right? Although I do not look like an angel on the outside, inside I am still an angel. Pure and untainted Moon, though, as he continued in his monologue. Thought I would have to be extremely careful so that I would not end up on a research table. Kale looked around for a bit and found herself a boulder to sit on. She approached it, swept it a bit so that the dirt on top fell off, and sat on it. So the situation of the city is like this. 3 clans, Mink, Orc, and Lizardman, rule over the city. With Mink being ranked first thanks to their leader, Thunder Rabbit Phase, who had once reached ultimate class. And I presume he is not ultimate class anymore, considering that you said once instead of is. Kale nodded at him. Yes, he fell to about peak high class in my estimation. Since he is a pure magician, although if he were a fighter or wasn't a pure magician, he would have grown much weaker. Moon nodded, as in dropping his pupils slowly and raising them back up. Because of it, the situation of the city is not looking good, with Orcs and Lizardmen trying to become the head clan and with Mink trying to keep their place. Kale sighed heavily after saying that, bearing a complicated feeling in her chest. On one hand, she was once a student of a prominent elder of the Mink clan, who taught her, raised her until adulthood, and was also someone who had a deep love for his clan and his race. On the other hand, the elder who was akin to a parent to her was killed by quite possibly another elder named Farinhard, who also chased her out of the city like a beggar, with everything except the things she wore confiscated or outright stolen. To add salt to injury, she was even hunted down by a few of the Mink. A deep affection for her parent no matter what their race is, mixed with anger and fury for the people who took everything from her and those people who just watched. She sighed deeply as she shook off her lingering feeling, thinking that she should just put her past away. So the Orcs started. She continued recounting everything she knew along with what she knew, without hiding anything, while also telling what she predicted, no matter how low their possibility was. Moon asked things that she didn't explain while also discussing what she predicted. Midway through the discussion, Moon stopped. Is there any way to leave the underworld in the city from your knowledge? Gale put her hand under her chin as she tried to remember if she had heard of anything that had something to do with leaving the underworld. I am not sure, things like that are rare around here, although very rarely some things like that appear briefly in the main auction of the city during the annual events. Oh. Moon wondered, his eyes lighting up akin to light as his brief hope that a way to leave the underworld had appeared. Give me a few examples. Kale scratched her jaw as she dug deeper into her memories to find the information. Most of it is in the form of a ticket to illegal trafficking. Some creatures, mostly devils, would sell an allocation for trafficking for a hefty sum. A very, very hefty sum that is akin to a year or two of clan profit. But very rarely, artifacts that allow teleportation appear, but the last one appeared about 100 years ago. When does the annual event in which the auction appears happen, and is there any clinic, hospital, or store that sells healing potions around here? Moon inquired while also displaying his plan on what he was going to do to accumulate that large amount of money. A simple plan that he came up with while training during the day. Surely, nothing can beat my holy magic on healing, right? It happens every 10 years, and the next one will happen about 3 years later, and while there are some clinics and stores that sell potions in the city, it is rare, and they all charge ridiculous prices for even the simplest of potions. Gale nodded with a bit of a confused expression on her face. Moon, seeing her confused expression, realized that he had not revealed his healing power to either Kale or Katu. So he explained it to them and demonstrated it on a rabbit that he caught during the day. By cutting it up and healing it several times. Why several times? Because Katu said she wanted to see it again and again with an excited expression on her face. We could earn massive amounts of money in a short time with this, heck, becoming even the richest person in the city within a year or two is possible. And with not so high competition, it will be a breeze. But what we should do with, your appearance? There is no need for you to be worried about this. I can put my energy into a bottle, and we can sell it. There is no need for me to be beside them for it to work. Thought you would have to find ways to disguise my magic signature. If it is about hiding the signature, I can do something similar to that, but it would reduce the effect of the potions. Then it is better, we don't want to draw too much attention. After that talk, Katu and Kale went to the city and exchanged a few valuable items, like golden teeth and the hide of a powerful monster, for some money and bought a small house on the edge of the city, which was pretty cheap since it was quite run down. All of its windows were cracked, and there was not a single wall without any dents or holes. They spent another 2 days fixing it, which in reality meant just Katu and Kale. Since Moon can't go near the village freely, he helps cut down trees and turn them into planks. While also killing some powerful beasts nearby and giving them to Kale to cash in to purchase things that they can't get. After that, they put up a board with a big-ass sign saying, "Revalidation for all." A truly massive sign, which even from the village can see, 7 meters wide and 5 meters tall. To prevent it from falling, Moon had to find some strong wood called Kasia, and had to bring it to Katu and Kale. And they paid a few workers and put it up. Kale, Katu, and Moon could be seen standing outside their store in the middle of the night. A big sheet was thrown over Moon to prevent him from being seen. At last, finished. Moon thought as he gazed at their small rundown shop with holes here and there, along with some dirt and mud on the walls, showcasing that they hadn't exactly cleaned it after finishing it. The store was 1 story tall, about 7 meters by 7 meters, with a small stall on the front, selling some strong animal parts that don't deteriorate quickly. Like skeletons or teeth, along with some lizard-like creature's skin. Gale, when asked by Moon why it is necessary, replied to him. It would allow us to avoid some trouble, although we would still have to go through some foolish ones. When one came inside, one would smell a heavy herbal smell and would be greeted with a counter, and behind it would be rows upon rows filled with nothing. Empty and barren with only a single small shelf in the corner filled with bottles with some of Moon's energy. A diluted yes, but still much better than what the monsters in the village and city had ever seen. Capable of healing any minor cuts and bruises in seconds and can speed up more severe ones. And in the back of the store, there was a kitchen and 3 beds. 2 small ones and 1 extremely big one, although Moon thought it was a bit of a waste since he wouldn't be sleeping on it much. Tomorrow, Gale and Katu opened their shop, and instantly, in a few hours, they received 5 orders. Showcasing just how much healing items are in demand. Although the fact that there is a sign saying it will be half the price for today might have influenced it. But still, the potions were not something that are cheap like groceries. In fact, a normal potion would cost a sword or 2 under normal circumstances. Why is this brown? An ogre asked while scratching the top of his head with a confused expression on his face. Katu, upon hearing him, instantly jumped closer to him and started repeating the speech Kale drilled into her mind last night. Because it uses a rare, powerful monster hearth, which when brewed with. She continued, on and on. Explain it in a form that made the potion look like it was created by the god himself in heaven. Using flowery language akin to a politician's use. While also making it seem like she explained everything, but in reality she did not. And Ogre, just after a sentence or 2, couldn't keep up with her. Just showing an even more confused expression before buying it and leaving. So it is good, huh? He muttered while leaving. After taking and counting the coins, she waved her hand towards the ogre, bidding him farewell with a happy expression. Thanks for your purchase. After which she marched towards another customer to Kunfu. Explain their potion. Chapter 15. Sunlight rose from the east, just as it had for countless numbers of times, bringing light and warmth to the underworld as it cast its radiant light upon the land. When the sun just arose, the birds of the sky rose promptly, instantly flying out and starting their day as they chirped and went on their business. The other monsters or animals hearing it also arose from their slumber to start their day. Herbivores eat their plants while carnivores hunt for meat. The village was just like the forest, but instead of birds marking the beginning of the day, it was a huge ringing of a bell from the city. Its sound, capable of reaching incredible distances, woke the monster and animals in the village. One by one, they woke up from their bed. For those without a bed, they woke up from wherever they slept. And in the middle of the village stood a massive 3-story tall stone building. Its walls, as if newly renovated, were without any cracks or moss. And the pillars, which were dark wood, looked as if they had just been cut down, still fresh and vibrant. And on the top floor of the building, there was a bedroom with 3 beds. 2 small and 1 massive. While the 2 small beds had occupants, the massive one did not have it, causing the bedroom to somehow look a bit desolate despite only 1 occupant being missing. From one of the beds, a goblin woman with the edge of her hair grayed out could be seen waking up. Hua! The goblin woman yawned as she rubbed her eyes, still hazy and sleepy from just waking up. She turned a bit to the right, towards the stool next to the bed, and grabbed a glass of water and drank it. Good Hua. Then she slowly got up and walked towards the window to see the village. And the sight that greeted her did not disappoint her. A hazy golden hue dyed the village as it glistered like gold. The walls of the city in the distance were also dyed, giving them breathtaking color. Some monsters who had already gotten up could be seen going in on their business. The owners or workers who work at restaurants or taverns could be seen preparing their meals, while the owners of shops could be seen setting up their stalls. While the view was breathtaking, the heavy iron window that was between her and the outside world damped the view a bit, but Kale did not mind. Then from the corner of her vision, she saw Cat sleeping with all of her limbs spread in all 4 directions, salvia dripping down her mouth. Her mouth was raised and her eyes, despite being asleep, was curved, suggesting to Kale that she was having a quite nice dream. A mischievous grin graced her face as she approached Katu. Then she put her mouth near her ear and shouted. "Wake up!" Katu screamed as she jolted awake like a startled cat, blowing air around her as she rapidly got up. Her breath rapid and her pupils contrasting wildly. "Why did you do that?" Katu screamed. Her childish voice echoed through the big long halls of the shop. Kale just put a hand over her mouth as she got up to leave the room while pretending that she did not hear her question. Pff. Just the slightest bit of laughter fortunately or unfortunately escaped her mouth as she left. "You aren't leaving without giving me a premium pike made from a superior pig," she screamed as she ran after her while clutching a pillow in her arms. Meanwhile, outside the village, tens of kilometers away, Moon could be seen flying in the sky. His normally pristine white wing, now almost golden after being enhanced by Moon's holy energy, could be seen flapping rapidly, akin to an engine, as Moon flew with speed akin to a speeding bullet train. No, he was even faster than it. Every time Moon's wings blazed golden, his speed grew even faster as he flew. He would leave behind trail of wind as he flew, causing not a few animals to turn where they heard the sound with a confused expression. After about 20 or so kilometers, after traveling for unknown amounts of distance, Moon finally slowed down. Absolute top speed for 30 minutes. I have gotten better at this. Slowly Moon lowered himself as he gently fell in the middle of the big river. His eyes opened wide as he fell and started floating while facing the crimson-red sky of the underworld. His eyes, which from the third-person perspective looked like a weak spot for attacks, were ironically the toughest part of his body. With a transparent armor-like membrane over his eyes that blocks heat, cold, shockwaves, and anything that might penetrate. However, the rest of his body did not enjoy this privilege as it sometimes got injured. However, it is rare since even the rest of his body is incredibly resilient and tough. Moon raised his left and right rings on top of him, causing his wing to rise from the water as it glistered under the sun. There he saw 70 or so faces of drawn beings in absolute terror and agony, with some of them even moving despite being just a black mark on a wing. About 68 middle class and 3 high class. Moon muttered. Yes, he killed several high class beings during this time. 2 of them were shadow wolves, 1 mutant, one of which has noble blood or whatever. And another was a yeti, from the snowy mountain. But he still did not transform like last time when he did, nor did that eldritch monstrous sound come to him and sound. But still, it did not bother him much since he was still growing stronger. Though it was getting a bit slower, he had a feeling that soon he would take the next step towards the path, hopefully granting him a human body. Author, which I won't and never will. At best, you will get a partial form. While he was floating on the water, he thought of the business that had bloomed like sakura during this period. The instant when the first few customers tested their effect, money started rolling in like crazy. Every time they closed, there were dozens of customers in line waiting, and when they got up and opened for the next day, those people would still be waiting. The moment he saw that he was super fled, only later would he learn that they were merchants and they were selling their potions at double the price in the city. However, later, the inhabitants of the city would learn and start buying from them instead of those merchants, and Moon, Katu, and Kale would also increase their price to match it. Then the next month or so were the happy days. They would rake in money like crazy while also repelling some assassination or kidnapping attempts that probably came from their competitor. Which forced them to hire several bodyguards, not for Moon obviously but for Kale and Katu. Because he is spending most of the night in the forest surrounding the village. Finding trustworthy guards was easy enough since Moon could instantly tell their character by how much disgust he was feeling when he saw them. And if they were sufficiently clean, then they could ask some simple questions. A few questions like, do you have an ulterior motive? What are your goals, and where were you working in the past? Got the job done. But out of the dozen or so applications, he unfortunately killed 3 of them because he couldn't resist. 2, which he instantly blasted to ashes just upon gazing at. And another whom he attacked, causing the unfortunate orc to gaze upon his form. Because of it, they had to finish him off. But in his defense, he has grown much better at controlling his instinct. He can now confidently say he is capable of keeping his mind clear and calm when he attacks them. But after that period, the road started growing bumpy, with 3 clans of the city starting to want the new alchemy shop as their own. First, it was the Minks. They came to the store one day, wanting the shop to be relocated into the Minks parts of the city and for a certain amount of money of theirs to be paid as taxes. In return, they would protect them and allow them to live a life of luxury in the city. Which surprised Moon quite a bit, not the proposal or deal, but the fact that they did not try to force or kidnap them. Instead, they made a decent offer, although he doesn't know if they will keep their promise when they enter the city. But they acted much better than he expected. But because of Moon's situation, it wasn't possible, so they refused, and when they refused, they tried other ways, such as better treatment, no tax, and the like. Heck, they were even willing to buy all of their potions for higher than they were selling. In return for not selling anything to anyone. And the orc, who came just after Minx, was the exact opposite. They wanted them to give up everything they owned and become their slaves, with fake follower titles. In return, they would protect and feed them. When the orc representative declared his plan to take everything and make them slaves with a fancy title called followers, fortunately and unfortunately, Moon was on the top floor at that exact moment, and he heard every word. And those words boiled his blood and caused his otherwise golden pupil to darken and turn sluggish black while the chains around his pupil that seemed to seal something started to brighten up in response, though he didn't see the darkening of his pupils nor the glowing of his chains. But he managed to keep it to himself at the cost of going on a rampage outside in the forest. That day, he learned that he somehow gained immense pride and arrogance that he didn't have before. Those words that Orc spoke as if he was superior to him, a true angel, touched places that none had reached. And the fact that the Orc somehow had strength akin to a high class made it even worse. Suggesting to him that he might even lose if they ever fought, no matter if he has a higher chance of victory. By the next morning, he collected every corpse along with the skeletal remains of all he had previously killed, not caring if they were middle class or low class. Heck, he even put out the one high-class shadow wolf remains on display in their monster remains area part of the shop. The only high-class monster that he has killed at that time. This, for some reason, seemed to have worked, as Orc stopped being aggressive and started proposing deals, no matter how stupid it was, such as you become my subordinate, giving us all your potion, and in return we will protect you and give you half the money we earn from those potions. This continued for a week or so, and then Lizard Man's representative came in one day and proposed a deal that they instantly took. A deal was that they would give a certain amount of potion to each clan every month while also giving an extra few potions to Lizard Man in secret. In return, they would make the other 2 clans back off and stop them from bothering them. They will also provide some help, like selling some of their specialty at a lower price. Slowly the speed at which he floated stopped as he reached his destination. A lake that has a mid-high class sea monster inhabiting it. He swung his wings once against the water's surface, instantly throwing himself 5 meters high. His radiant and eldritch appearance appeared in full glory as he readied for his battle. His opponent appeared at just the right time. A sea serpent-like monster with blue scales and fins. Moon started gathering a large amount of holy energy while preparing to do a flash boost. While the sea serpent started swimming towards Moon rapidly, his body, which was in the water, cleaved the water into 2 parts as he swam. He is stronger than expected. Moon thought in his mind while sighing. He silently sent apologies to Kale, as she would probably be waiting for him in the meeting location for quite a few hours. But nevertheless, since he started the fight, he will finish it. Chapter 16 At last. Moon muttered as he lay on top of the monster, whose body was torn and ripped to almost shreds, with only the skeleton being the only reason they did not separate into pieces and skin. The remains of the beast dyed the water around him into a color of crimson red, drawing other smaller and weaker monsters to the feast. Moon did not care that they were devouring his would-be trophies, since he already got what he got here for, he thought as he shifted his gaze toward the skull of the beast. As if in response to him, the skull of the monster started radiating a smoke that looks faintly similar to one that an air purifier creates. Little by little, more smoke started coming out, until soon the whole skull was covered with it. Then from all the smoke, a small tendril of the smoke reached out to Moon and touched him. As if it started something more and more smoke started reaching out to Moon and started getting absorbed by Moon. A minute, 2 minutes, after 3 minutes all the smoke was absorbed by Moon, and a new face appeared in his right wing. A lifelike replica of the beast's skull, but instead of the usual drawing that looked just like a black drawing, it was moving around and roaring as if trying to escape. Revealing the fact that although he could absorb the souls of those higher grade than him, they would resist and fight back. Heck, the first time he absorbed that mutant shadow wolf, he did not know of this, and it somehow influenced him, causing him to become rigid and robot-like for a few days. Because every movement required extra focus, and sometimes some part of his body would move on its own when his focus was diverted. But because he had already experienced this 3 times, he gained enough experience, power, and willpower to overpower and control his body without problem. However, despite this, the occasional twitching and shaking can't be avoided. He turned to the sky and spread his wings. His wings spreading in full length of 3 meters as he swung his wings and instantly shot out into the sky, causing the body of the beast to sink into the water while sending ripples of water throughout the lake. Boom! He flew in the opposite direction than he did previously, going straight to the meeting place. After quite some time, Moon has reached the meeting place. A small hut a few mountains away from the village that is surrounded by dense and big trees that 2 men can't encircle around it. He sent waves of dust flying as he slowly descended. His form, which is usually pristine and beautiful, was muddled with dirt and a few injuries that he had received from the beast, dampening his appearance. Right as he descended, the door of the hut opened up, and annoyed Gale got out, with a faint vein pulsing on her forehead. "Sir Moon, where were you?" "I was busy fighting a beast," Moon muttered while gently flapping his wings. His eyes bore down on Gale. "You said that it would at most take 2 hours yesterday and that you would be here before the meeting time," Gale questioned, her eyes narrowing. "He was stronger than I expected. Sorry for making you wait," Moon said, his deep voice vibrating through the air as he said so. Though he apologized, because of his appearance and his deep voice, it did not sound like that. Instead, it looked like he was just saying this as words with none of the feeling or intent behind it. But Gale, who already knew of this, just turned around and walked towards the hut, while Moon followed behind her. However, when he reached the door, he had to stop and retract his wings and use them as a leg to walk inside since he otherwise wouldn't fit. After going in, he walked towards a big couch and sat on it, while opposite him sat Gale, who sat on a chair. "Let's get straight to business. The shop is doing fine, and we are earning a bit more money than we expected. By the end of the next year, we should be able to accumulate enough money. But the political situation is a disaster. The health of the Thunder Rabbit has deteriorated even further, and orcs started testing the minks. Is it that bad? Can he hold on until we acquire our ticket out of the underworld?" "No, he can't. He at best could hold on for a year before he falls." Moon sighed slightly in his mind as he stared at the ceiling, feeling a bit annoyed and tired that it was not going in his way. What about his son? He is also a high-class mink and has been for quite some time. He should be quite strong. Kale shook her head. "Yes, but he is at best middle class. He didn't inherit his father's talent. What should we do? When they start fighting, we won't be able to escape the storm, and we will be forced to take a side, and even if we do take a side, we will become high-priority targets. And if this continues as it is, those devils might not even come here. Considering how much of a mess the city would be. For now, just try our best to maintain neutrality on the surface, act stupid or dumb if you must," Moon said, his tone heavy and with an edge of decisiveness. "Understood." Kale grimly nodded. After that, a few seconds of silence ensued, with the only sound being present being the sound of a wind that was entering the hut through some small holes, blowing air into the hut. "On the other hand, have you gotten what I requested?" Gale nodded to Moon. "Yes, all the books and totems are in the secret place. And no one, not even my daughter, knows about this." "Kadu?" "No, you're right, It is better that as few people as possible know about this. Moon answered while he stretched his wings slightly, signaling that he was a bit uncomfortable with the new couch. Also, find me a few locations of mid-high class monsters. Who is alone and not close to any dangerous area? Gale raised one of her eyebrows in surprise. Again? Though I won't instantly attack for now, so just give me the general location. And basic information like their habit, strengths, and weaknesses. Alright, I will deliver it to you tomorrow. Gale replied as she leaned back. Her mind was no doubt thinking of ways to repel any and all recruitment attempts. Acting stupid, huh? Never thought of that, but if I were to do that, wouldn't they become even more determined since we will become a liability? Oh, I could pretend that I am extremely serious about keeping my word, and since we already made that potion agreement previously, it gives me an excuse. Moon, who sat, interrupted Gale. Alright, let's get down to other things. Okay. Gale answered, snapping out of her thoughts. Then, they talked about other things that, while important for the business, weren't that vital compared to what they just talked about for the next hour. Without any pause or suspension, they talked and decided what they should do, what they should watch out for, and the like. But when they reached the topic of their competitor, Sainawiram, a guild of alchemists, they just couldn't decide what they should do. Their biggest competitor and newest rival is a guild with over 9 experienced alchemists and over 20 apprentice alchemists. A byproduct of their rapid expansion, which pushed all others to desperation, causing them to transform into a single big guild. While they don't have potions comparable to their quality, they made it up with quantity and other types of potions that are in much lesser demand but still valuable. But about a week ago, Moon and Gale released a stamina potion, making the newly created guild grow desperate, and they started doing everything they could to crush their business. Unfortunately, it did not work since the 3 clans stopped all their attempts, but the 3 clans also warned Gale that they must not send anyone to try to crush or kill them. They can compete like before, but they can't do anything that is considered unfair. Moon can understand their goal since they didn't try to hide it, and it was quite obvious once you thought about it. They wanted them to compete with one another, pushing one another to create a stable market. With no one having any monopoly over the market, whenever one side had an advantage, they would help the disadvantaged party until that advantage had disappeared. Heck, they might even put up another competitor for them in a year or 2 if they get tired of doing that. Since a 3-way standoff is much more stable than a 2-way. Gale and Moons are trying to solve this. On one hand, they want a monopoly over the potion so they would have much more room to maneuver the political situation. If they had the monopoly, the current problem of getting stuck between a hard place and a rock would be solved. And if they don't, they might be dragged into the whirlpool that is intensifying every second without mercy. Gale wanted to raise the quality and quantity of their potion so that they would instantly push their opponent out of the market, therefore getting the monopoly of the potion market. But the possibility of the 3 clans becoming even more crazed about them is high, and if they increase the potion quality, they would have to decrease the modifier, which prevented anyone from discovering that it is a potion made of holy energy. A plan that is quite dangerous. In contrast, Moon wanted to quietly go to Mink or Lizardman's clan and trade their help for a way to leave the underworld while also requesting their help in establishing themselves as the sole monopolies. Since the possibility of any devil trafficker coming to this annual celebration is decreasing every second, Gale then countered that the possibility of them having anything that could teleport them out of the underworld was extremely rare. Even if they do have it and are willing to trade it, for them to keep their promise after it all ended would be rarer. When the time came, they could just blame their opponent when they asked for it, like they attacked our base, and unfortunately, it was destroyed, etc. There are thousands of ways to blame their opponents. While they were debating, Gale asked a question that made Moon pause. Why are you in such a hurry? You are an ageless being, right? One thing you don't lack is time, right? Moon stayed quiet for a few seconds, his gaze, that is in the shape of a golden pupil, shifting a bit to the right, looking through the window. Where a few bushes, along with a massive tree, could be seen basking in the last rays of the sun for the day. A few grasshoppers were sitting on one of the massive leaves of the bushes, making a cricking sound that is unique to crickets. Ageless, huh? Maybe yes, you might be right. One thing I don't have to worry about would probably be my lifespan. Since I am an ageless being who can live thousands upon thousands of years without a problem and without any scars that time would give, it doesn't mean that one could live so carefree just because of it. It just means that they don't have to worry about aging. Moon stayed quiet for a few seconds after that, letting the wind that was occasionally entering the cabin be the only source of sound. A stormy time is coming, Gale. And it is a time in which those fortunate will rise to the top while those unfortunate or those who reacted later will be left in the dust. Moon shifted his gaze towards Katu, his eyes akin to the sun bearing down on Gale, and it intimidated and scared Gale. And I want to be one of those fortunate at the top, basking in the true sun's ray, Instead of this artificial creations, doing what I wish and shaping the very structure of the world to my liking instead of this cursed cycle. Which has no end, only beginning until time immemorial. Chapter 17 Cursed Cycle? Kale hesitantly inquired, her voice audible and low. Yes, the cursed cycle, a cycle in which the weak and helpless are crushed, exploited without mercy. Moon said, his body radiating intense light akin to the sun itself as he looked on. Innocent and honest, thrown aside, discarded, some even thrown in prison or executed just because of their very nature. Kale quietly muttered, But Moon did not let her continue. It is not possible to erase all evil since it is part of all living beings. Is this what you were trying to say? Why.s. Kale hesitatingly said. Kale, we live in a world in which gods, dragons, and devils live. There are beings out there older than even the stars themselves. Do you think there is anything impossible in this world? The only thing that restricts one from doing what they wish is a lack of power. And I will reach the very pinnacle of power to do what I desire. Moon said. His words were filled with conviction and belief. Kale sat petrified in her seat. Her mind was confused and muddled as she digested Moon's opinion. No, his belief and conviction about his aspiration and his desire. I don't care if your opinion and belief align with mine or not, just remember, every minute, every hour I waste in this place, is a time that I could have used doing something better. Moon said, his voice reaching every nook and cranny of the small hut. Kale sat quietly after that, her head down and her shoulders slumped. Her eyes were hidden behind her hair as she sat on her chair. Seeing Kale's reaction, Moon wondered if he had been too harsh, but he wouldn't take back his words. For every word he spoke was from the deepest reaches of his heart, with not a single falsehood or lie visible in any words. Here, he was trying to stay afloat in the power struggle of the city while trying to hide the fact that he was an angel by hiding or covering himself when inside the village or close by, and most of the time living outside the city in a cave with only a bed as the only furniture. A thing that would be entirely unnecessary if he were in heaven. There he would be flying in between the clouds while fully spreading his wings, getting taught by angels who already paved and walked the path that he was walking. There he wouldn't have to go and train himself like a blind person navigating through a maze. Instead, he would have a person guiding him, helping him, and even protecting him. In a few days, find a chance to connect with the Mink clan and propose my plan to them. Moon said as he got up from his couch and started getting out of the hut. Meanwhile, Kale, after Moon left, sat on the chair for almost 10 minutes. Her mind was a swirling mess as she looked at the past few months. She and her daughter lived a life of luxury for the past few months, where most of the time they were flanked by bodyguards and bought or enjoyed everything the village had to offer, eating the best food and sleeping on the best bed. Granted, they didn't just sit idly, since they managed the shop and trained. Kata mostly trained in the spear, while Kale trained in magic. Her magic, which mostly stagnated over the past few years, improved just like in her youth, just like when she studied under her teacher in the past. About 2 weeks ago, she reached mid-class, a thing which just a year ago she thought impossible since she didn't have any magical books or any money to buy decent equipment. Heck, even Kata reached mid-low class. In stark contrast, Moon, because of his appearance and the implication of the truth about the fact that he was an angel, was revealed as always living in the shadows. He slept in a cave far from the village most of the time, without enjoying the fruits of his labor except for one bed that she smuggled out of the city, and trained day in and day out without any rest. Despite this, his growth in strength was a lackluster, at least that was what Gale heard from him. Every time he faced a problem in his training, he would have to sit down and think it through by himself. The help the magical book and totem could provide was lackluster since they are all about mana, different from holy energy. The very pinnacle, huh? Gale quietly muttered as she got out of the hut. Going towards the city to check up on business while sending a message to the Mink clan to propose the deal Moon made. I wonder if you can reach it. After a few days, she managed to secretly converse with the Mink clan and managed to appoint a place in which she could converse without anyone's eavesdropping. The agreed place was a hill quite a few kilometers away from the village, where a cemetery used to be. But because of the fact that only the poor or unfortunate are thrown or discarded here, it became a place of scorn and disgust. Therefore, 3 clans buried everything in the cemetery and, in its place, planted a bunch of trees. One of the things the 3 clans did that Gale personally liked, although she never voiced it. Tick-tock 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 ding-ding, a wooden clock with a massive body akin to a tall, small closet rang loudly, and its bell sound filled the room where Gale sat. From a third-person perspective, the room where Gale sat looked like a fancy office that the lords in ancient times had. Granted, some of the craftsmanship of the furniture does not meet the standard, but the massive carpet is located in the middle of the room, the fancy chair and table are on the edge of the room, and the side on which a massive window lies is all outlined and became the main reason why this is akin to an office from an ancient noble time. And behind that massive table sat Gale, her hair combed into a businesslike style. "It is time," she quietly muttered as she got up while grabbing the jacket that was hung over the chair she sat on. Her heels, which were not that tall but still considerable, rang as she walked out of the room. Tick-tack tick-tock. When she got out of the room, two bodyguards who sat beside the door walked up to her. "Miss, should I call Bernard before we depart?" Gale nodded to the tall kobold bodyguard as she walked past them. "Call him and, remember, try not to start a fight," she muttered as she walked, her heels clacking on the wooden floor being the only sound that was produced in the quiet hallway. After she walked away from her bodyguards, she took a right turn and opened a secret door. A trapdoor that will open when a person taps the floor in the right sequence. From there she got out of the building while wearing a black hood that she got along the way. Then she quietly started walking towards the agreed-upon place. Along the way, a few figures started following her, their height varying quite a bit. Some as tall as 2.5 meters, some even as short as 1.5 meters. But Gale was not worried since about a third of the people following her, which was 3, were her own. While the rest were probably mink or other clans. Nevertheless, she continued walking quietly, and when she walked out of the city, some of the people following her left. Few still followed her, but midway, when she was about a kilometer away from the city, her bodyguards stopped them. So she alone walked towards her destination, but not straight towards it. She circled a bit to make sure that the people following her were truly gone before walking toward the meeting place. When she made it there, she saw only one person sitting beside a massive tree. The massive body of the tree was blocking the wind that would otherwise blow into the dark figure who sat, shielding him from rain and wind. The leaves on the tree made a rustling sound as they swayed back and forth. Some animals, like owls, cooed as they sat in the darkness. "You are late," the figure said as he turned towards her. The hood fully blocked the faint moonlight falling on top of him. "Had a little detour along the way, apologies." Gale slightly lowered her head. The figure waved his hand. "None taken, so what important thing do you want to discuss?" Gale quietly slid 2 steps to the right as the wind rushed straight toward her face. "I have a proposal for you and your clan. I will support you within the limit of my capabilities without holding back." "Oh? Why the sudden change? I thought you were going to keep trying to maintain your neutrality." The figure put a hand under its chin as the figure leaned on the hand. Through the stretched hand, a white fur could be faintly seen. "In exchange, I want your clan's support and a magical artifact capable of teleporting one across dimensions. It doesn't matter if it is a one-time use. Magical artifacts are becoming quite rare in recent times, you know, and artifacts capable of teleportation across dimensions are so rare that I could even count the number of times they appeared in a city on one hand." The dark figure started tapping its finger on the ground as he sat. Tick-tick. Gale remained expressionless as she waited, her eyes betraying no nervousness or panic as she looked on. "Mr. Famd, should we meet again when you discussed this with your father?" The shadowy figure who Gale referred to as Famd waved his hand. "No need for it, I alone am enough. My clan has collected quite a few artifacts over the centuries that it has existed, and among them, there is indeed an artifact capable of teleporting one across dimensions, specifically to the human world." Gale's expression faltered slightly upon hearing it. Just the slightest bit, barely enough that a normal person wouldn't notice under normal circumstances, but unfortunately, the figure immediately noticed it. "But you should know, potions won't suffice if we are trading an artifact of this scale. We will need more than that." Her eyebrow unconsciously furrowed as she sensed him leading her on. "What do you mean by more? Please elaborate." "Oh, nothing, just a tiny help from the person behind you will suffice." The dark figure's eyes started glowing in the dark as he slowly folded his hands. Gale slightly furrowed her eyebrow, not because they knew there was someone behind her back. No, that was already an open secret from day one, when she first opened the shop with bones of middle-class beasts on display. It is the fact that he is proposing that he would be willing to trade if Sir Moon helped them. And from what she knows about them, that tiny help that he said would not be a tiny, not so troublesome help instead. It would be a favor equal to the value of what they propose, which in this case would be, in her estimation, fighting or killing a high-class being. "I will need to discuss this," Gale answered while narrowing her eyes at the figure. The dark figure just waved his hands calmly in response to her. "Go ahead, I am not that in a hurry. Let's see, how about a week from now? It should be plenty of time." Gale nodded her head curtly. "Yes, it would be enough. Have a good rest, Mr. Famd." Gale bid her farewell as she turned around and started walking away. But Mr. Famd, after she took a few steps, said, "Do you bear the grudge against the clan?" His words, almost a whisper, were delivered to her ears, causing Gale to stop dead in her tracks. "Don't worry, my personal feelings won't affect the decision much," she uttered as she walked away, the wind embracing her from the back as she walked away. Won't affect much, huh? So it will still affect it. Famd shook his head as he stared at the fleeting back of Gale, the owner of the biggest potion store in the city and one of the richest people. I guess I should also leave. He muttered as he got up with a spring, dusting his clothes as he got up, and started walking away. But after walking a few steps, he stopped and looked behind himself, feeling like someone, or something, was looking at him, so he looked around a bit but didn't see anything but trees and some small animals. After which he shrugged it off the next second, deciding to trust the fact that he had already surveyed the surroundings several times before her arrival and his abilities over his instinct. Which was in and of itself a mistake since about a kilometer away, Moon could be seen looking at him quietly. His form was covered in a makeshift dark blanket with only his pupils visible. Not a single lie, huh? He muttered as he sat. Chapter 18 Moon rested on the riverbank after his training, his eyes slightly narrowed and wings drooping. And his feathers were also soaked in dirt and mud, while his body was covered in a layer of dust, diminishing his otherwise pristine appearance as he sat. Meanwhile, behind him lay a battleground with massive holes with 4-meter diameters or mounds of dirt created by the dirt in the hole. Some trees surrounding the battleground-like place were ripped apart, some even burned to a crisp, with a wisp of smoke still lingering in the air above. Huck beside him stood Kata with her face flushed red and veins pulsing on her face as she exerted herself to cast a spell great above what she could currently cast. Slowly sparks started appearing right in front of her hand as she pushed every mana that she had into the spells. In turn, the number of sparks that appeared increased, but not every effort was rewarded as the spell failed. Instantly all the spark disappeared, and Kata fell backward on her butt. Thud huff, huff, Sir Moon, will I ever be capable of shooting lasers huff like you? Between breaths, she asked. Moon, who became better after a few minutes of rest, replied. If you try hard enough, yes, you will. He answered. Believing that she should be capable of it in a few years, though if she had asked if she could grow to be as strong as him, he would have answered might, instead of will. Since not every monster has equal potential or talent, and among the monsters, goblins have one of the lowest levels of talent. But thankfully, Kale has one of the highest talents in magic art among goblins, and Katu, her daughter, inherited that very talent. Granted, her talent is a bit inferior to Kale, but her talent is still on the level of a super genius among goblins. Let's finish up, since it is getting late. Kata nodded at him as she got up. Okay, I am also getting hungry for some pike. You really love pike, huh? Kata crossed her arms as she huffed with a blared nose. Of course, pike is the best food to ever exist, she said, while Moon just looked on impassively. After which he blinked really slowly before going towards the village to escort Kata back. Along the way, Kata explained everything that happened to her for the past week. The topics she talked about ranged from mundane things such as what she ate to important things such as the conflicts that she saw in the city. With most of them being orc or lizardmen testing minks. Which he thought to be stupid since Thunder Rabbit, the strongest being in the city, though weakened and dying, was still alive. So if they started testing the Mink clan before he fell, he might just go crazy and attack other clans right before he weakened even further. The strongest being in the city who was once an ultimate being attacking with the will to die is not something to be taken lightly. No matter how weak he has become, though he has likely grown significantly weaker, he is still probably at the late stage of high class. While that may not sound particularly strong, he was once an ultimate class being, possessing experience and knowledge unmatched in the city. If he pushes himself, he might even be able to unleash the strength he had at his peak for just a minute or two. In the end, they are still beasts who are driven by their instinct more than logic, no matter if they can talk and think for themselves. Moon thought to himself as he escorted Katu. After escorting Katu, he flew back to his cave and started resting. His body, which had become quite stiff and rigid after his training, slowly relaxed as his holy energy regenerated. The light that he unconsciously emits slowly started coming back as dirt and mud that found their place on him started evaporating, restoring him back to his usual appearance. When the sun was about to set, he opened his eyes and flew out of the cave. His wings sent gusts of wind every time he flapped as he flew north, towards the place where the mink messenger had informed that orcs would be transporting ore. Along the way, his mind wandered a bit towards what happened in the 2 weeks. After about a week from that day when Gale proposed the plan, they met up again and agreed on the trade. And he was there when it happened for obvious reasons, like making sure he didn't lie. The trade they agreed on was for Kale and Moon to provide 8 potions a week and for Moon to help them 3 times. And yesterday a messenger from the Mink clan sent Kale a message and requested that Moon destroy a caravan of orcs. And from the information that Moon received, the caravan would have only 1 peak mid-class and 5 normal mid-class beings along with 20 or so low-class beings. All the middle-class beings, along with most of the low-class, are orcs, while the other low-class beings are other monsters. Also, they requested that they would like their spy, a low-class orc, to be spared. However, they did say that they won't blame him if he kills him. While he was musing, he arrived at his destination. And he saw his target. March faster. Orc with a scar that ran down his whole face yelled while clutching his war axe. He was built akin to a tank with limbs akin to a trunk of a tree and a torso akin to a brick wall. And in response to his shout, other orcs who were slowing down because of the long march sped up. Their boots no longer dragged on the ground as they started marching faster, throwing a bit more dust behind them in the process. From beside him, an orc with glasses approached while carrying a book in one hand and a hammer in the other. "Captain, with the rate we are going, we should be able to reach the city in the morning." The scarred orc, who is named Scar, grunted at him in confirmation before walking up to the caravan. His sharp eyes surveyed for a bit before going in to take a bit of a breather. Only for the orc, who wore glasses, to bellow in a loud voice. "Something is attacking." His shout reached every being in cavern before an explosion akin to Drake's breath killed him, while also sending scorching hot smoke to the surroundings. Boom! Scar's face tightened into a frown as he put his hand in front of his face as he blocked the scorching smoke while trying to make out where the enemy had attacked them. His yellow eyes, which glowed in the darkness akin to an ember, looked around warily. And through the small opening of the smoke, he saw the being who attacked him. It was a monster with a body as an eye and pristine white wings. It had a pupil in the shape of a cross along with chains around the pupil. And between the smoke, he saw the pupil glow. "What the hell is that thing?" he muttered under his breath before bellowing out to his subordinates. "From the SKY, you fools, spread out, all bowmen shoot that thing down." His subordinates, who were a bit in disarray with their tight formation loosening, instantly spread out while looking out to the sky. Meanwhile, the bowmen drew their bows while aiming towards the sky. But fortunately or unfortunately, most of the bowmen's vision was blocked by smoke and only some bowmen who were on top of the cavern shot toward the monster in the sky. The monster, upon seeing the bowmen and the arrows that they were about to release, fired those strange beam-like things at them. The beam was mostly yellow with a hint of gold, and it was extremely fast to the point the bowman did not have enough time to escape after releasing the arrow. Instantly the bowman was also blown up along with the top part of the caravan where they stood. Meanwhile, the arrow that they released shot towards the monster who, as if in mock to their effort, effortlessly dodged their arrow while also manifesting tendrils of energy that shot towards the orc warriors. "Damn!" Scar cursed as he saw this happen. "You fucking beast, come at me!" he bellowed while grabbing a big rock beside him and throwing it towards the beast. The beast, without turning its head, just grabbed the big rock that he threw using the yellow tendrils that it manifested and returned it to him with speed even faster than him. Scar, upon seeing it, dodged to the left while still clutching his war axe. A low growl escaped from his mouth as he got up, his eyes narrowed even further and jaw clenched tighter. After which he ran to one of the tendrils and swung his axe towards it. Swish! His axe gleamed under the sun as it cut through the air and cut the tendril. Unfortunately, even though his axe almost fully cut the tendril, the small part that wasn't cut remained, and the tendril rapidly generated back. Just a second later, he heard the sound of an explosion along with cries of orcs, who were hit along with it. It burns. GRG in their deep and heavy voice, they screamed. The cries of his subordinates irritated him as it made warriors of the orc tribe look like the rest, who always wailed and screamed for the slightest of injuries. He turned around, took a deep breath, and shouted, "Focus, bastards!" But midway through, he stopped as he saw something that would scar him for life if he ever lived the tale. Scar had seen death before. He had seen warriors fall, had heard the last breaths of his comrades, had watched the light drain from their eyes. But this was different. Their souls were being devoured. He saw them, faces twisted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. Their bodies had long since turned to ash, but their spirits still fought, still reached for him. "Captain, save me." A voice, Bernard's voice, echoed through the battlefield. Scar turned, his breath caught in his throat as he watched Bernard's soul, a faint flickering silhouette, dragged into the monster's feather while a multitude of light hands materialized from the wing and embraced him, then dragged him. For the first time in years, Scar felt fear. Real, gut-wrenching fear. His hand tightened around his war axe as he turned around and shouted at his subordinate. "Grab its tendrils," he bellowed in his deep, husky voice, which became shaky and weaker while also running towards one of the tendrils and grabbing it. The orc warriors, upon hearing their captain, started running towards the tendrils and one by one grabbed it. Scar then bellowed in his husky voice. "Pull!" he yelled, his voice vibrating through the clearing as he pulled. The orc warriors also pulled with all their strength. Their veins pulsed, their legs dug trenches into the ground, and their face turned red as they pulled with all they had. The monster started retracting the energy that made up the tendril as it also sent a blast of energy toward them. But the beast in the sky did not dematerialize the tendrils fast enough as the orc managed to pull them into the ground. Boom! The monster hit the ground again to a boulder falling from the sky, sending waves of dust through the surroundings. Now attack! Scar bellowed, akin to a howl, as he drove head first towards the monster, his war axe clutched in both hands as he ran. The other orc warriors, hearing him, also followed after him. Their war cry vibrated through the forest as they marched on. The ground under their feet gave in before their legs as they ran. Their muscle was akin to steel gleaming in the last ray of sunlight as they dug headfirst into the smoke. When about half of the orcs entered the smoke, the orcs who were rushing towards the smoke saw their brethren sent flying backward and the smoke clearing. And then they saw it, the monster had grown an additional pristine white wing, and the wing that was previously there changed. Now there was another pair of eyes on the wing that was previously there. And on the new wing, there was a white orb in the middle of the wing. Scar, the only one who managed to dodge the shockwave-like attack, stood there with bloodied hands. "Thank you," the monster said for the first time the battle began. The words that the monster spoke were akin to hundreds of beings saying the same thing at the same time in different languages. It sounded eldritch and for some reason calm. Those words that the monster spoke were painful to hear and even harder to understand, but he understood its meaning. The beast, who attacked them, the beast who killed his brethren and brothers was thanking him. "Don't mess with me, you abomination," he bellowed as he hurled his fist toward the beast with every ounce of strength he could muster, straight towards its eye. Ding crack! The moment his knuckles made contact, a sickening crack echoed through the air. Agonizing pain shot up his arm as his bones gave way under the sheer impact. His flesh tore open, and shards of splintered bone jutted out from his mangled hand, blood splattering across the battlefield. "You he screamed as he retreated while clutching his hand. "What kind of monster are you?" he screamed. The monster didn't answer his question. Instead, it opened its wings even wider and manifested even thicker tendrils. All while staring right at his face, no, to his soul. Scar lay the ground on his back as he gazed at the beast as it flew towards his last subordinate, who was also much like him, at a death's door. His body was riddled with injuries ranging from a broken hand to missing left leg and left arm. The parts of his body also weren't without their fair share of bruises and cuts. Gurgle gurgle! The orc warrior who the beast was killing dies and the beast turns to him. The monster's golden pupil, which was in the shape of a cross, bore down on him as the being approached closer. "What kind of monster are you?" he asked using the last of his strength. But despite mustering everything he had, it came out as husky and weak. The monster stopped in its tracks upon hearing the question. Its two pairs of wings flapped gently as the being's gaze bore down on him. The being said as it resumed flying closer to him, "An angel?" Scar mockingly uttered as he gazed at the monster. "No, an abomination. If angels were beings like you, there would have been no need for the underworld nor the devils." The abomination who claimed to be an angel said before the spirit dug right through his head, ending his life. No, he did not end it as his soul lived on in the abomination's body, forever in constant torture and pain. Chapter 19. What a pleasant surprise! Moon thought happily as he soared through the sky. His new pair of wings was on full display as he started doing aerial stunts like the cobra maneuver, barrel roll, and Immelman turn in celebration. He didn't expect to evolve right when he was fighting. In fact, he thought he would evolve when he was fighting against something strong like a drake or wyvern, just like in those anime or novels that he saw. But he evolved when fighting against those orcs. Granted, they weren't that weak, especially that orc with a scar across its face, but it wasn't exactly hard either. However, it became much easier after he evolved, so the latter part of the fight doesn't count. Slowly, on the edge of the horizon, he saw his cave beneath one of the big trees in the forest through the slight opening between the branches. Granted, the only reason he managed to see that far was because of his ability and his body, which granted him vision and senses that he would have never imagined. Nevertheless, he flew back to his cave to find out what abilities he had gained after the evolution, as he had a feeling that he had gained some interesting abilities through the faint hunch that he had. Whoosh! While sending a gust to the surroundings, Moon landed right in front of his cave, sending waves of dirt in the process. After that, he flew to his favorite resting spot and rested for about 30 minutes. As despite his superior strength and endurance, the orcs had still managed to tire him, though not entirely. After a bit of resting, he got up from his bed and started exploring his ability. So how should I activate this ability? He wondered for a second as he tried to make it work, following the faint instinct he somehow had. He first willed considerable holy energy to the left side of his body and willed that energy to go beyond his body while losing those parts of his body in which holy energy is located. Slowly his lower wing's edge, in which the energy is located, started dematerializing and turned into a white golden flame that for some reason doesn't flicker or move. Strange as it sounds. He tried manipulating the flame, and the flame moved like it was part of his body, though considering that it was part of his body, it didn't surprise him. The flame first did a barrel roll before diving headfirst towards a nearby tree. The flame hit the tree, but it did nothing. No burning into ashes, nor exploding, which somehow confused Moon, as he expected a massive explosion to happen. So after he got up, he started flying while looking for animals to test it on. And soon he found it. A small rabbit the size of a normal human's torso, which under normal circumstances would look humongous, but here, in the familiar forest, it was a common sight. The flame touched the rabbit, but it did nothing. It didn't burn or explode. Granted, the flame could touch the rabbit and interact with it. Moon's eyes narrowed, and his wings started flapping faster. Why isn't it doing anything? Moon muttered as confusion found its place in Moon's head. Suddenly, he heard a weird sound and turned in the direction in which it came from and saw nothing but his flames. What was that sound? He wondered as he flapped closer and looked around for a bit, surveying the surroundings. Only for his brain to click a second later as he noticed that the rabbit had disappeared. What the? Moon wondered as he looked around for the rabbit. But he didn't see any trace of it anywhere, neither in the bushes nor in the holes in the surroundings. So that leaves the cause of disappearance only the flame? Moon, though, was unsure of himself. So he tested it again on another animal, a boar. Step by step he followed in his footsteps on what he had done. First, he let the flame touch the boar and waited for a few seconds, which didn't do anything. Then he retraced his thought process, thinking that it should help, which worked as the flame instantly evaporated, purified the creature. Though he isn't sure, since the creature disappeared too quickly, not even leaving behind the smoke or ashes to indicate that a living, breathing creature had just been here. After that, he tried and tested the flame and noticed that the flame only burned those he intended to. It would burn a whole tree in seconds if he wanted to by following his will, but it wouldn't bend a blade of grass if he didn't will it to. An ability that he thought to be pretty useful and interesting. Next up, Moon muttered as he turned to the father pig, who was squealing crazily. Silence, Moon said while using his new ability, which was called Authority, a power to command all living creatures. And the father pig instantly quit. It stopped making noise, heck. Its body even froze to not make any extra noise. How about this? Moon muttered as he commanded the father pig more. Lead me to where your kin is located. The father pig started moving and began leading Moon to its children. He spent the next few minutes following the pig, and the pig at last led Moon to where its children were. It worked, huh? Moon muttered. After that, he began experimenting with both of his abilities for the next few hours. First, he tested his ability on plants and normal animals, and after that on magical beasts from low to mid-class. Heck, he even flew to one of the nearby high-class beings and used it on it. As he was feeling quite confident after he evolved to high-class. And the conclusion and things that he learned are that authority, which, while sounding powerful, has a drawback. He would have to use his holy energy as a battery when he controlled them. For being below his class, he controls them without a problem. He could force them to commit suicide or even reveal every secret they had, and they would obey without hesitation. But if they are the same class, authority would still kind of work, but if the being has strong mental strength, they can resist. And how much it affects the authority would have over them depends on how strong they are mentally or how much strength difference there is within the class. Like, for example, if the opponent is at the peak of high class, and he is at the bottom, even counting the abnormal combat strength he had, the effect would be reduced, and if the target also has a strong mental strength, authority would have even lesser effect. No more than causing one to twitch or slow down. But still, he could see dozens of applications that he could use. He could extract any information from anything alive. Heck, if he improved his abilities, he could also do hypnotism or plant a trigger inside beings, and when the time came right, he could make it spring out. Also, Moon muttered under his breath. If in the future his subordinates' morale or will goes down, he could enforce it, making them regain their fighting spirit. Then it was the flame, which improved his fighting ability as the flame followed his will and burned, purified what he wished. And the flame somehow is extremely strong. He experimented on a high-class troll just an hour ago, after first testing the authority on it. He tested the flame on it after, and the result did not disappoint him. Heck, it even exceeded his expectations. The flame would first separate everything it came in touch with. Whenever it was a living being or even a thing like rock, it would first separate the components that made it up and then purify it. So in the short term, he just got himself a considerable passive boost to every attack. And to add a cherry on top, the flame's consumption of holy energy is almost non-existent, so he could spam it as much as he wants as long as no vital area is transformed, as it would be dangerous if another being managed to seal that part of him. As an experiment, Moon fully transformed himself into a flame and tried flying around for a bit. The result was a bit disappointing. The flame's speed was the same as his flying. But he shook it off the next second as he wanted too much, even though he had already gotten much more than he originally thought. The following days were spent on training and practicing just as usual. He woke up when the first ray of sunshine graced the world and started flying the next minute towards a lake. There he would wash up and kill a middle-class being, then eat its soul. Equative of eating for him, as it causes him to feel more content and fuller for the day, even though ironically he doesn't have a stomach, or any other organ than a knife for that matter. After that, he would start training by swimming to the depth of the lake while manipulating the materialized energy to grab onto small fishes that inhabited the lake. And every time he grabbed it, he would release them back as the number of fish in the lake is finite. After an hour or two of that, he would fly out of the water and start hunting for the day. When almost nighttime came around, he would fly back to his cave to rest, only to wake up just a few hours later to start the day again. This was a routine that he normally followed, though there would be a few deviations like Katu or Kale joining him, or some trouble happening to the business and the like. So although with some changes, he would mostly follow this routine, which a normal person, or even a person with incredible willpower and grit, would grow weary and tired if continued for an extended amount of time. Whenever they endured weeks, months, they would eventually feel it. But Moon did not feel any of it. He did not get bored or tired. Heck, the small progress that he made was all that he needed to keep on doing it indefinitely. Moon shook his face. His body stopped moving as he froze in the depths of the lake with fish of various sizes and colors swimming around him. Am I changing? Moon wondered, his eyes trailing across the faint sun that reached the depth of the lake. When did I become like this? A question followed the next second. A question to which he did not have any answer. Was it when I first died? His mind dug into his memory as it drew out his memory, which when he died and was reborn anew, as an angel. Or was it when I killed that troll? His mind follows through his memory of killing that troll. Ragu was its name. That day he started feeling that disgust towards other beings. That was also the day that the seed of ambition first started sprouting. His mind calms down as he resumes his training. Every being, whenever it is a human, animal, or plant, changes throughout their life, so even if I were to completely change into a being, I couldn't recognize. It is fine as long as I have my memories that prove that at one point, I, Moon of today, past of tomorrow's Moon existed. It is enough. Chapter 20. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months as the world continued on its path. Moon continued his training without pause or break, while Kale and Kata managed the business just as usual. After the trade agreement they established secretly, the Mink clan started supporting their business. Secretly and not so blatantly as possible. Granted, because of the other two clans, the Minks couldn't support too much. But about a month after that agreement, Thunder's rabid strength deteriorated even further. This caused them to increase their support to the point that they were just on the line, which would count as too much and suspicious. The only reason the other two clans remained suspicious was that, on the surface, Mink appeared to be trying to win their support in exchange for their assistance. While Kale looked like she was trying to maintain her neutrality as much as possible. Giving benefits that won't help Mink that much, just a slight edge whenever they were fighting, in contrast to the support Minks are providing to them. Which they could direct in other directions and get more benefit. But if the Minks were to do that, while they would get more benefits in the short term, they wouldn't get much in the long run. As the mysterious backer of that shop and the fact that at least from their viewpoint, the shop is a unified group, make it all the more worth it. At least that was the view the other two clans thought the Minks were having. While all this is happening, the Lizardmen and Orc on their own also try recruiting them. But their effort was quite lackluster and half-hearted, as Kale would usually say. And her words were proven true when the Mink clan revealed the latest information they managed to collect. A message confirmed her suspicion that the Lizardmen and Orc clans were focusing on trying to recruit their biggest competitor, Saina, a guild of alchemists over them. Although she could guess the reason why the other two clans were trying to recruit their competitor instead of them. The Alchemy Guild, Saina, isn't united and doesn't have any powerhouses in the high class, so they are much easier to recruit in contrast to Kale and Moon's shop, Revalidation for All, where they are extremely united, as they only have two beings in the lead. Kale, the head of the shop, and their mysterious backer, who was most probably in the high class. Heck, most of the beings in the three clans have the suspicion that the backer is probably in the high end of the high class. About a month later, the Mink clan requested Moon to destroy a Lizardman settlement, which Moon did without a problem. He massacred every single living being there and devoured their souls. While he was massacring, he came across a few juvenile Lizardmen, even some eggs. He had half a thought of sparing them, as they were pure and hadn't committed any sins. Though those already out of their eggs already ate their brothers' and sisters' remains. Specifically, those who failed to hatch and died. His senses confirmed that in the next second, as he smelled foul smell from half of that juvenile Lizardman. While he smelled nothing from those lizard eggs. However, He also didn't feel any desire to care for or protect those eggs. So Moon pondered, allowing these juvenile lizardmen to tell the tales of a monster with 2 pairs of white wings that came and destroyed and killed everyone wouldn't bring anything but trouble. But on the other hand, because they are young and their knowledge is limited, the things they can tell and inform or remember are limited. So fortunately or unfortunately, Moon, after a bit of consideration, decided to kill all of them, not sparing a single lizardman child, only leaving only the eggs intact. But he didn't devour the souls of any of the young lizardmen, as it was something that would cross a line that he set for himself. Though even if he did devour them because they hadn't reached middle class, their souls wouldn't do anything to him but boost his holy energy regeneration for a few minutes. After that horrific event, Minx, using some clever means, managed to pin the blame on the orc. Which, as Moon expected, caused a fierce reaction from the orc, as they hadn't done something like that. But Lizardman didn't believe it, as about 2 decades ago, something a bit similar to this happened. At that time, because of the default view they had of the orcs, such as brutish and rough, they thought Mink caused it, as about a hill or 2 away just before that incident, they reported that a squad of strong minks was seen, so they hit the minks in retaliation, which ended poorly for the lizardman as Thunder Rabbit was still at his peak. But that time's lizardman's leader also wasn't a soft sponge. The lizardman's clan's chief was a peak high-class being who has been, from the time he became the young chief to his peak, training by enduring lightning strikes and eating raw, strong electric heals. Because of that conflict, Lizardman lost quite a bit of resources and warriors. Heck, even their clan chief was seriously wounded. And unfortunately passed away a few years later. Heck, even the Mink clan wasn't without its losses. Thunder Rabbit was injured, and the Mink clan lost some warriors. After that conflict, unknown to the other 2 clans, the Lizardman clan didn't stop investigating. Month after month, year after year, almost a decade into the investigation, Lizardman discovered that the orcs, who they thought to be too brutish and rough to formulate or scheme anything, were behind that incident. But because too much time has gone by, those who were seething with fury are already quenched. The Lizardmen didn't declare war or anything like that. Instead, they started sabotaging the orcs silently. The orcs in turn, also because of their sabotage, started viewing the Lizardman clan with anger, having mostly forgotten or outright ignoring the possibility of their past actions being known. So on the surface, while the Lizardman clan and orc clan would try to suppress the Mink clan to become the head clan, they also fought with each other with an intensity that would have been much less if that incident hadn't happened. The cycle seemed to repeat itself endlessly with no end in sight. At least that was the thought process Moon had in the morning as he continued in his training. But now, he felt like the light at the end of the tunnel had finally been lit as the final and last request from the Mink clan came around. They didn't request anything hard, like killing the heads of both clans or something like that. Instead, they want him to destroy 2 mines of orcs and several locations in which Lizardman's food, specifically seafood farms, is located. So, Moon, not wanting to waste time, instantly shot up into the sky, while also sending shockwaves to the surroundings. Boom, he shot into the sky like a rocket, leaving behind a trail of sound as he flew towards his first destination. The orc mine. The fierce wind blasted towards his eye as he flew, but because of his natural defense and endurance, he didn't feel much except some tickles here and there from the wind. After about 30 or so minutes, he reached his destination. There stood a massive mine inside the mountain. The mountain itself was of incredible size and beautiful. It was adorned with flowers and grass on the lower side, and the top of the mountain was covered in snow, making a sharp contrast between the snow now and the natural below, akin to winter and spring. While in the middle of the section, there were several entrances to the mine where a few orcs could be seen loading up ores and other precious minerals. What a pity that I have to destroy such a beautiful wonder of nature, Moon muttered as he laid his gaze upon it. The grassy smell permeated the air surrounding the mountain along with a faint smell of water, making Moon wonder if there was an underwater water source nearby. Some birds like hawk or eagles could be seen going in and out of the mountain, telling Moon that their nest is quite possibly located there. Borg, what is that? Huh, what? Oh, that, what is that? A few orcs who were loading up the cart stopped and started pointing at him and talking. But because of the long distance in which Moon was located, they couldn't see anything but white wings and a ball-shaped eye body. Moon turned his gaze towards the group of orcs, his golden eye that is akin to a symbol turning towards them. Fear not, for it won't take long, he said, his voice vibrating through the mountain, reaching their ears and delivering his message. What did that thing just say? I think it said, fear not, it won't take long. Though what did it mean? A orc with a pickaxe swung over his shoulder said. Just as they were conversing, Moon, using his newly obtained ability, the Flame of Purity, started blasting them, along with everything within a 10-meter diameter around, instantly shaking the mountain and throwing up smoke crazily, alerting the mine's guards that an intruder, Possibly a magician or a monster capable of causing widespread destruction is coming. But fortunately or unfortunately, Moon did not stop after only one strike, as he continued firing a steady amount of fire into the entrance of the cave. And using the senses that he felt, using the flame to burn and smoke all the orcs living in there. His flames spread like snakes, as they coiled and searched for their prey, going searching from room to room, from cart to cart as it burned everything in its path. Their cries of anguish echoed through the cave as they fell like weeds. Their bodies separated and evaporating as they vanished from the face of the earth, no, from the face of the underworld, leaving nothing behind, not even their clothes or things they were grabbing. A sight that would cause silent suffering to many unfortunate orc widows and their children who would wait for their husband and father despite the possibility of them being alive being almost zero. Meanwhile, Moon, who was blowing fire steadily into the entrance of the mine continuously for 10 minutes, finally stopped as the last trace of his flame returned to him and returned back to his body along with some energy and steady amount of heat which for some reason made Moon feel warm and full. After which he turned around and flew to his next destination, a lizardman fish farm. In a night sky adorned with stars of a variety of sizes, a lone star could be seen moving across it. That star for some reason looked like it had wings, but Kale, who was gazing at it from her office, shrugged it off as just a hallucination that was caused by stress. So she decided that she should get some rest and finish the work for the day. But unknown to Kale, the star with wings was Moon, who, after almost a day of continuous travel, finally came back to his cave. His body was covered in bruises and cuts, wounds here and there, but otherwise he looked fine as almost all of his injuries were skin deep, no, more like only feather deep. His eyes, although in the shape of a cross and glowing golden, were hazy. As he had pushed himself and had destroyed every single one of his targets. Granted, he did leave some lizardman eggs alive. Nevertheless, his biggest accomplishment to date. Why destroy all of it in one day? One might ask. Well, it is because the lizardman and orc would fortify or evacuate if he was too slow. The only reason why Moon managed to destroy every single one of his targets without much trouble was the fact that lizardmen and orcs had some sort of conflict, which Moon suspected was caused by Mink for obvious reasons. So reinforcements were delayed, and Moon managed to destroy everything right before the main reinforcement came. Although the head supervisors that guarded the fish farm in the lizardman farm weren't something to scoff at, as Moon faced at least 3 high-class beings today. With them being armed and having the assistance of their subordinates didn't help Moon. Nevertheless, tomorrow, he would go converse with Kale a bit and decide on a place to trade that magical artifact that is capable of teleporting several beings to the human world without a problem. Heck, he even made plans on what he would do when he got to the human world. He would first go low profile as much as possible and use the gold and some materials that Kale managed to hoard to get some money and travel to Rome, specifically to the Vatican. Then he would go to heaven and train there. While also trying to get himself a sacred gear or something along the way.